Chapter 1062. Originally, as the male lead, Ting was expected to attend. But his identity was already there, and it wasn't his job to be an actor. So he decided to stay in Hyrule for a video conference. Soon, they returned to the van. Inside, Tongning changed in her gown and fixed her makeup. From the looks of it, you must be an extra. Don't you care about your identity as a superstar? Look at other artists. Which one of them doesn't have a makeup artist on standby? To be exact, in order for their artist to stand out from the crowd, they've even used their entire team. In this aspect, Tongning was becoming more and more humble. However, with your current appearance, even if you're wearing a gunny sack, you'll still shock everyone. Tongning giggled as she reminded Long Jie to take care of her stomach when there were so many people around her. After all, she was currently pregnant, and nothing was more important than her body. Long Jie nodded her head happily. After experiencing the incident with the Liu family, she now treasured the people around her even more, especially when she thought about Father Liu and Mother Liu's divorce. She reminded herself that she needed to live a happier life than before. Soon, the couple arrived at Nzaheo's rendezvous point, and Nzaheo went to pick up the ghost elf, Coco. Children grew very fast. It had only been a few months, and she had actually grown taller. As soon as Nzaheo saw Tongning, he pointed at her from head to toe and said, "Although you're still elegant, don't you think you're a little too plain for the red carpet?" Tongning was wearing a silver spaghetti strap dress, and her wavy hair flowed down her back. She didn't have any makeup on, nor did she have any jewelry on. In fact, she wasn't even wearing any earrings. All she had on her finger was the ring that Ting had given her. I want to see Qiao, Senator, being too flashy isn't appropriate. Okay. And Zaheo nodded his head as a hint of admiration appeared on his handsome face. And Zaheo had always admired Tongning for being loyal to her friends. Her attire was extremely simple, but her aura was there. However, the reporters were all guessing how she would dress up for her debut as a model. After all, this was the first promotional stop for her film and her comeback. She was going to surprise everyone with her unique look. After all, when they looked at other artists, which one of them wasn't competing for attention? Quick, look, Tongning is here. Tongning, hurry. She's finally here. The reporters around them started snapping away at Tongning. But as Tongning stepped onto the red carpet, everyone was shocked by her simplicity. Tongning was already keeping a low profile, but the reporters thought she was going the opposite way this year and was going for the minimalist route. Her clean and bright outfit accentuated the color in her eyes and made her look even prettier than when she was dressed up. As for the female stars that walked past, they were filled with regret. Why did they have to compete for beauty? Why didn't they show themselves in their natural state? Looking at Tongning's skin condition, it couldn't be better. And her figure, especially her eyes, clear and flawless, as beautiful as a dazzling diamond. The netizens who were watching the live broadcast of the red carpet almost burst into laughter. This year, each female star is more beautiful than the last. It's like a flock of chicks competing for beauty. But it was instantly destroyed by Tongning's simple and unadorned style. What a strange scene. Wrong. This year is a jewelry competition, but it can't compete with the simple wedding ring on Tongning's finger. This year's celebrity teams have all miscalculated. 2, 3, 3, 3, 3. It's also very wonderful and funny. Am I seeing things? Which artist is this? How dare she wear a dress identical to Tongning's? She wore the same dress as Tongning, and she's smiling and waving at the media? Damn, if there's no comparison, there's no harm. Tongning's aura is eye-catching. She's as light as a chrysanthemum flower, like she came from the heavens. But for them to wear the same dress at an event like this, it's still quite awkward. It's best if they don't bump into each other. But that sister is wearing the same dress as Andy Ning, Coco said as she pointed to a young artist not too far away. Following Coco's words, Long Jie took a closer look and furrowed her brows. Tongning, why don't we swap? Swap what? Tongning laughed. Your size is different from mine. Wouldn't it be more awkward if we swap? Moreover, it looks quite nice on me. Seeing this, Nzaheo said to Tongning, You are, after all, the best actress. You need to be mindful of your identity. Tongning looked down at her dress. She originally wanted to make some changes, but they were too close together, so someone noticed they were wearing the same dress. Thinking about Tongning's identity, how could she be wearing the same dress as a small artist? Who styled her? Were Hairue's stylists just for show? The best actress is embarrassed. That's why. Why did she choose to be simple? Did something happen? It's better to pick one out of a million. After all, limited editions are more valuable. Just like the dresses they're wearing, I have countless of them hidden in my wardrobe. Yet, Tongning doesn't care about her identity. Every year at the film festival, the outfits of female celebrities were always one of the highlights. Not only did Tongning not follow the rules, she even won applause with her simplicity. But now, let's see what she's going to do. Meanwhile, the young artist who wore the same dress as Tongning noticed the awkward scene and began to panic. After all, she was wearing the same dress as Tongning. So, she glanced at the people around her, especially the director who had brought her on stage. Could Tongning have misunderstood that she was trying to gain popularity? With this thought, the young artist wanted to step forward and explain things to Tongning. Or perhaps she wanted to get changed. But, to her surprise, Tongning asked Ning Jia to remove her black suit jacket and hand it to her. She put it on and approached the young artist. Ning Jia, I didn't do it on purpose. The woman did not expect Tongning to smile at her. Don't take it to heart. I am simply appearing on stage today as a producer. So, the elegance should belong to the person standing at the front of the stage. The woman did not expect Tongning to respond in such a way. She was overwhelmed by Tongning's favor. But what surprised her even more was the two-time Flying Sky Best Actress. Tongning actually put on a jacket and left all the glory to a small-time artist like her. Afterwards, Tongning walked past her and used her identity as a producer to resolve the awkwardness. At this time, the director of the small artist's film stood beside her and sighed. Learn from her. This is the elegance of a superstar. Afterwards, the scene of Tongning resolving the awkwardness began to spread. On one hand, it was because the artists were amazed by her high EQ. On the other hand, it provided a model for future celebrities who wore the same dress. Chapter 1063. Not long after, someone leaked a photo of Tongning visiting Qiao Sen's grave that morning. As a result, everyone understood why she was dressed so plainly. She was paying her respects to an old friend. Afterwards, she headed straight for the opening ceremony of the film festival. Seeing this, the netizens couldn't help but sigh. I don't know why, but when Tongning returns with the film behind her, she feels even more dignified. Before she left, she once said that she would carry on with Qiao Sen's dreams. Now that the Ant Queen is about to be released, I'm guessing she's going to pay her respects to Qiao San because she wants to tell him the good news. It's easy for a woman to live like a vase, but it's not easy for her to live with her thoughts and emotions. I don't think Tongning really cares about the outside anymore. Indeed, she didn't care. So, for the sake of a minor artist, she put on a jacket and covered herself up. Wasn't your move a little too clever? Long Jie finally realized what happened. A normal person would think of ways to resolve an awkward situation, but they would only make it even more awkward. But Tongning did it with ease. Indeed, there was a gap between people. Tongning smiled. Just as she was about to say something, she ran into a young man that looked 70 to 80% similar to Han Xiucha. This was the man that Long Jie previously mentioned, Han Xiucha's older brother. As expected, because of Tongning, the man stopped in his tracks and smiled politely. I've heard a lot about you. Now that I've seen you in person, you certainly live up to your reputation. You're too polite, President Han. We've had a lot of interactions in the past, but seeing you in person isn't as good as hearing about you. Tongning stretched out her hand and shook the man's hand. I hope you won't take the incident with Xiucha to heart. He's just a kid, that's true. But I hope President Han can tell Han Xiucha that next time he does something like this, he needs to erase his logo. Tongning laughed. Plus, I'm waiting for him to kneel down and apologize. It seems the misunderstanding between Miss Tang and my brother is quite deep. Han Jie's expression turned serious after hearing Tongning's words. After hearing Tongning's words, Han Jie's expression turned serious. However, since Miss Tang is willing to let a mere artist off, why don't you be generous for once and let my brother off? Tongning looked at Han Jie without saying a word. At this time, Han Jie took a step forward and stood in front of Tongning as he whispered, "Do you want me to tell the public that Miss Tang hired Hollywood to help with the post-production of her film?" Tongning furrowed her brows. "You can fool others, but you can't fool Xiao Chei's eyes." After speaking, Han Jie walked away from Tongning with a meaningful smile on his face. "Your expression changed. What did he say to you?" Long Jie immediately asked. "Do you still remember that he and Han Xiuqia both believe that we found a Hollywood team for post-production? Han Xiuqia is also researching sci-fi. That jerk is still clinging to you, isn't he?" Long Jie humphed. "I don't understand. Why does he have to go against you? Does he have any evidence?" And Ziheo asked. "The post-production was done by my team, and the Americans didn't even touch it. What evidence could he possibly have? But if he creates something out of nothing and spreads the news, it will have a huge impact on the film. After all, you've always claimed to be a domestically produced film, yet you're also Joan's disciple. It's easy for the audience to be influenced by you. What are you going to do then?" "What else can I do? I'll just deal with it as it comes." Tongning replied. "I'm part of my team, so I can naturally prove my innocence. If Han Xiuqia dares to do anything to hurt me again, I will drag him out and personally make him kneel down and apologize. Han Xiuqia and his brother are complete trash. Long Jie, after the film festival, immediately investigate their family background. I think abandoning their mother is the best way to cure them. She wanted to destroy their hearts." The opening ceremony of the film festival ended with a wave of boos. After all the celebrities were competing with each other, yet they couldn't compete with Tongning's everyday outfit. As for Tongning, she ended up in a suit and left the spotlight to a small-time celebrity. She didn't steal any of the limelight. All she wanted to do was promote her film, The Ant Queen. Meanwhile, at the film festival, Tongning overheard Long Jie's gossip from time to time. She talked about which actress cheated and got pregnant, how her husband caught her in bed, which male star had multiple girlfriends, how he was being harassed by the media, and how a certain person had been divorced for many years but still refused to admit it. The entertainment industry was all about fame and fortune. Who didn't try their best to climb up? Perhaps, in the eyes of these people, Tongning didn't care about the rules because she married a good husband. Indeed, she had to admit that because of Mo Ting's protection, she was able to avoid a lot of the rules and tricks of the entertainment industry. So, whenever she had free time, Tongning would find a secluded place to slack off. Unfortunately, she had to attend the awards ceremony and dinner that night. Seeing that Tongning wasn't paying attention, and Ziheo couldn't help but laugh. In the past, you used to enjoy the atmosphere. After all, you used to be a model and enjoyed the attention of others. But now, it seems you don't want to attend events like this. "I've become like this since I started filming," Tongning replied. "I've decided to get engaged to Xingyan. I'm not young anymore, so I want to have a child. It would be best if the child can be as obedient as her." After hearing this, Tongning nodded her head. "Indeed, it's time for you to settle down. Xingyan has suffered a lot, so of course, she's very naughty. You're a lot older than her, so you should give in to her. Okay, let's go out. Rumors have been going around for a long time. If we're being used by someone with ulterior motives, wouldn't we have to waste time explaining ourselves? You can leave first." "I'll wait for Long Jie," Tongning replied, and Ziheo nodded his head and returned to the venue. However, Han Xiuqia, who was staring at Tongning the entire time, noticed this and took a photo. The reason he sent Han Jie over was so he could take a photo of Tongning. Since this woman prevented him from appearing in public, shouldn't he give her a response? Of course, those that knew Tongning well knew that she had a scandal within Ziheo in the past. So, did this mean that he had caught her red-handed? Was she using an event like this to cheat on him? And Mo Ting sure trusted this woman. Plus, just a moment ago, when he tried to eavesdrop on their conversation, he heard the woman tell him to settle down. As a result, Han Xiuqia was even more certain that the relationship between Tang Ning and Han Xiuqia wasn't normal. Of course, this matter was already in the past for Tang Ning. Even if she brought it up again to create hype, it wouldn't cause much of a commotion. But it wouldn't change the fact that she was a fickle woman. Chapter 1064. But it didn't stop him from disguising Tang Ning. So, Han Xiuqia put on a disguise and deliberately embellished their conversation with the staff at the church. How could a piece of gossip like this not spread? From the moment Tang Ning appeared, her outfit, her film, and the fact that she went to Qiao Sen's grave had already become the hottest topic. But now, an even more shocking piece of news was revealed. Someone had overheard the conversation between Tang Ning and Zaheo. It was a conversation that involved children and stability. Hey, have you guys heard? The staff overheard their conversation. They're using the event as an excuse to have an affair. That can't be. Tang Ning can't be that blind. Everyone knows how to choose between Mo Ting and Zaheo, especially since Tang Ning is so smart. You don't understand? If you have one at home, you can find another. That's the only way to show off your charm. But is there evidence? I heard there are photos and recordings. That's disgusting, isn't it? During the event, the female celebrities smiled gently on the surface. But behind their backs, they spread the news that they had heard on the streets. At this time, Tang Ning had no idea about Han Xiuqia's rumors. But Long Jie heard it from a few of the managers. Long Jie, tell me the truth. Is there something going on between Tang Ning and Zaheo? I promise I won't tell anyone. What and what? Long Jie was confused. Don't you know? Everyone at the event has heard about it. With a mindset of gossiping, a few of the more familiar managers explained the situation to Long Jie. After hearing this, Long Jie had no idea where this rumor came from. I admit that they have a good relationship in private, but there's nothing like what you're saying. I knew you'd give me a boring answer like that. Let's go. Everyone knew that Long Jie was protective of her boss. So, even if Tang Ning did have a problem, she would try her best to cover it up. Afterwards, Long Jie returned to Tang Ning's side and explained the situation to her. What did you say to Zaheo just now? Zaheo said he wants to get engaged to Xingyan. I told him to settle down as soon as possible. Long Jie sighed and said helplessly, someone heard about it and is now spreading rumors that you and Zaheo are cheating on boss behind his back. Didn't such a thing happen before? Why is it being mentioned again? Long Jie shook her head. Rumors are the hardest to deal with. Keep quiet. People will say you have a guilty conscience. Explain yourself. People will say that you are trying to cover up. Also, your friendship. After hearing Long Jie's words, Tang Ning laughed. Since it's hard to explain, then there's no need to explain. If no one responds, this matter will be over. The more you react, the tighter they hold on to you. Even so, Long Jie wasn't willing to give up. But Tang Ning knew she had no choice but to endure the misunderstanding from these idiots. But Tang Ning did not care. Why? You're better than them in every aspect. You come from a good family, and your acting skills aren't bad. Now that your movie is a hit, those unfortunate people will, of course, keep an eye on you and want nothing more than to poke a hornet's nest out of you. So, you're just going to let it go? Otherwise, are you going to explain yourself one by one? Time will prove everything. Looking at the looks in everyone's eyes, Long Jie couldn't understand why these people had to be so sinister. Afterwards, Zaheo also caught wind of the rumor, but he simply laughed it off without giving any response. Apart from notifying Xingyan, he had no choice but to let her know. Today, I attended an event with your Ning Jie and got caught up in another scandal. Why did you drag Ning Jie into this? Chun Xingyan rolled her eyes. You're a frivolous director. My Ning Jie still needs to travel the world. You're not angry? Of course not. My Ning Jie isn't as blind as I am. Zaheo laughed as he held onto his phone. Meanwhile, Long Jie took a break from the event to give Mo Ting a phone call. Tang Ning's high EQ was able to resolve other people's awkwardness. But what about her own? That night, at the awards ceremony, Tang Ning sat with Zaheo as usual. They both knew that no matter what happened, it wouldn't affect their friendship. After all, they both had their own interests. But behind the scenes, there were still a lot of people pointing at them. They obviously knew there was a problem, yet they didn't try to avoid it. Were they waiting to be scolded to death by the media? The artists that attended the event all felt awkward for the two. Even though they were a few rows away, they still pointed at their heads and discussed amongst themselves. It seemed they were worried sick for the two. But everyone understood. They wanted to watch a show and didn't mind blowing it up. Tongning did not react in any way, but Long Jie felt like she was sitting on pins and needles the entire night. She couldn't take it anymore. The two were obviously good friends, yet these people couldn't stop talking nonsense. You're pregnant. You shouldn't be so impulsive. Tongning comforted. It's already happened so many times. Why can't you learn to calm down? That's because you're pregnant and your emotions are unstable. You can't handle it. Long Jie scoffed. It was natural for a pregnant woman to have a quick temper. Tongning held on to Long Jie and urged her to attend the awards ceremony in silence. It's almost over. Hold on a little longer. As it was only a promotional event for a new film, the Ant Queen had nothing to do with any of the awards. But as the film had been receiving a lot of attention lately, the host turned his attention to Tongning after presenting her with the award for Best Documentary. Tongning and the host looked at each other and seemed to have understood something. Tonight, the stars are shining brightly and the lights are dazzling. The handsome men and beautiful women are too much for my eyes to take in. Especially since I've seen Tongning in an event in public, it's very touching. Can I invite you up on stage so we can have a chat? As the host had seen the trailer for The Ant Queen at the cinema, she was very interested in the film, so she was willing to help promote it. Tongning stood up from her seat. She was still wearing Long Jie's jacket, while Long Jie was wearing Enzaheo's suit. Come quickly. This segment was added at the last minute by the host and was something that she could control. As everyone was interested in Tongning's topic, the organizers did not stop her from inviting Tongning on stage. Tongning walked over to the host's side and they shook hands. I've seen the trailer for The Ant Queen and I think it's super amazing. Can you tell us about the follow-up to the film? For example, when it will be released and a few other events. Chapter 1065. Tongning received the microphone and said to the audience, "We will be holding a test screening very soon. As for the release date, it hasn't been confirmed yet. Can you tell us the story behind the film?" Hearing the host question, Tongning smiled. That's quite a wide range. After all, it's true that we've spent a lot of time and effort on it. After experiencing a lot of hardships, Qiao's son passed away unexpectedly. I heard that you went to see Qiao's son before you came to the show today. At that time, Qiao Sen's death must have been the biggest blow to you, right? It also led to a lot of misunderstandings and rumors. What do you think made you feel worse? From the moment I announced my comeback, I've always been at the center of controversy. Haven't I always been like this? Tongning hinted at the scandal within Zaheo. That's why rumors can't hurt me. However, Qiao Sen's death made me doubt a lot of things. But because of him, I persevered until the end. So, I'll never forget him. You're returning to the industry as a producer, right? Does that mean from now on, your main focus will be sci-fi films? Yes. Tongning nodded. Apart from films, I won't be participating in anything else. In that case, won't you step out to explain the rumors that have been spreading about you? Don't you plan to defend yourself? Don't you feel wronged? Knowing that you're innocent is the best way to fight back, Tongning replied with a smile. Well said. The host gave her a thumbs up. I hope The Ant Queen does well at the box office. I would like to give you my best wishes. In a moment, I will be giving you a present. I hope you like it. The host did not say anything else, so Tongning simply nodded her head in thanks. She had become more and more indifferent towards life and had no interest in chasing after the industry. Afterwards, Tongning handed the microphone back to the host. But as she turned around, the right heel of her silver high heels broke because she lost her balance. The audience sighed as the host quickly ran over to help her up. You've encountered a small problem. Are you okay? I'm fine. Tongning stood up straight and tried to steady herself. But because her heels were broken, there was nothing she could do. This morning, when she went to Qiao Sen's grave, she had walked for a long time on the gravel road, so the heels were a little worn out. But with so many people watching and the media taking pictures like crazy, the audience felt Tongning had never been so embarrassed before. There was a scandal, and then there was the incident with the heels. Who knew, when she stepped down from the stage, the media might even question her for creating hype. But now, more people were worried about how she was going to get off the stage and regain her dignity. At this time, Long Jie stood up from her seat. Originally, she wanted to help Tongning to her feet. However, at this time, a black figure suddenly appeared from the back of the seats and headed straight for the award ceremony stage. As soon as Mo Ting received a phone call from Long Jie, he rushed over to the set. However, he kept a low profile and waited at the back. But, seeing his wife trapped on stage, how could he possibly wait for Long Jie to save the day? His heart was in so much pain. Look, President Mo is here. Why is President Mo here? As everyone was sitting in their seats, and Mo Ting was tall and slender, he was especially eye-catching as he walked down the aisle. Everyone watched as Mo Ting descended from the sky. He walked around the aisle and onto the stage. In front of everyone, he knelt down in front of Tongning. Take off this shoe. The host gasped in surprise. He never expected Mo Ting to come. Meanwhile, Tongning obediently took off her shoe and placed it in Mo Ting's hands. Afterwards, Mo Ting held onto Tongning's shoe with one hand and lifted her in his arms. Why are you here? Even Tongning was a little surprised. You fell from the sky. Wow, President Mo is here to save the damsel in distress. They are so lovey-dovey. The host joked as he watched Mo Ting and Tongning leave the stage. However, Mo Ting did not leave with Tongning. Instead, he escorted her back to her seat and once again returned to the back. Long Jie thought to herself, maybe I should ask boss to come down and she can leave. But when she turned around, Mo Ting had already disappeared into the darkness. So, Long Jie turned and asked Tongning, are you okay? Do you want me to go out and buy you a pair of shoes? It's fine. Since Mo Ting is here, you don't need to worry about it. Tongning smiled. Since Mo Ting had taken her shoes away, it meant he would either come back to pick her up after the event was over, or he would go out and buy her shoes. Okay, Long Jie nodded. Since Mo Ting is here, does that mean the scandal between Tongning and Zaheo is no longer true? Who knows? It's not impossible to have a foot in both boats. Behind him, there were still people discussing the relationship between Tongning and Zaheo. As a result, Mo Ting overheard their conversation. So, as he walked out of the hall, he searched for a nearby shoe store and gave Luce a phone call. Come to the film festival. I have something to deal with. After receiving Mo Ting's task, Luce didn't dare to be negligent. He immediately put down all the work in his hands and drove to the event venue. By the time the film ended, it was already 9 p.m. Following that, there was a dinner to be held. Artists began to leave one by one, but Tongning couldn't do anything because she didn't have any shoes at this time. Mo Ting reappeared at the entrance of the venue with a box in his hand. He then knelt down in front of Tongning and pulled out her original pair of shoes from the box. However, they had already been repaired. President Mo is so rich. Why didn't he buy Tongning a new pair? Are you stupid? Would a new pair hurt her feet? Of course. The original pair would be more comfortable. I didn't expect President Mo to be so meticulous. The passing artists began to discuss amongst themselves. They were naturally envious of Tongning. Get up and take a walk. Tongning held on to Mo Ting's warm hand as she stood up and smiled. No problem. Let's go. Mo Ting placed Tongning's hand in his. I'll accompany you to the dinner. After all, he was the male lead, so it wasn't a problem for him to attend the event. Not to mention, he was Tongning's husband. As for Tongning's sudden situation, she originally wanted to complain about it. But because of Mo Ting's intervention, it turned into a story of a hero saving a damsel in distress. Chapter 1066. A husband that fell from the sky and was as caring as ever. Why is Tongning's luck always so good? President Mo is so handsome. Daddy Ting dotes on his wife too much. He's 100%. Of course, at the dinner, everyone still treated Mo Ting's appearance like they were watching a show. Why? Perhaps he hadn't heard the details of Tong Ning and Zaheo's affair yet. How pitiful was this man? But no one dared to warn Mo Ting, unless they didn't want to stay in the industry anymore. But faced with everyone's secretive expressions, Tong Ning simply laughed it off. Since Mo Ting was here, it meant he already knew everything that happened at the event, and the person that snitched on Mo Ting was Long Jie. Don't blame me for being nosy. I simply feel that boss needs to make an appearance to suppress this situation. After all, no matter how much you say, it's not as important as his trust. Afterwards, Lu Che finished what Mo Ting had instructed him to do and approached Mo Ting. He then whispered into Mo Ting's ear, "President, I found the first person that started the rumor through the surveillance cameras and a bodyguard. Where's the evidence?" "I've got it," Lu Che said as he looked at the storage device in his hand. "Store it and wait for my orders." Tong Ning had no idea what the two men were discussing. She simply knew that the rumor today wasn't as simple as it seemed. Words like child and stability weren't things that the average person could immediately identify. President Mo. Hello, President Mo. Because of Mo Ting's arrival at the dinner, the gossipy people had no choice but to temporarily stop gossiping. As for the people that Mo Ting brought Tong Ning to talk to, they weren't people that small-time celebrities could reach. So, the dinner was a little boring. Originally, Tong Ning thought the incident would blow over like this. But Mo Ting directly led her towards Han Jie, who was standing amongst the crowd. "President Han." "Oh God, President Mo." Han Jie was obviously surprised by Mo Ting's greeting. "I would like to ask, where's your brother? Doesn't he owe my wife an apology?" Mo Ting directly asked Han Jie. As soon as these words left his mouth, everyone was stunned. Of course, no one was as stiff as Han Jie. "Just because I didn't say anything doesn't mean that I've forgotten about it. Back then, your younger brother was the one who made the promise. Why didn't he fulfill it in the end?" Han Jie looked embarrassed. He suddenly didn't know how to answer. "President Mo, why do we need to bring this kind of thing to the table, right?" Mo Ting smiled faintly, but his tone was aggressive. "President Han sure knows how to play double standards. Today, when I was in a meeting, my wife's assistant called me. I didn't know that attending such a lousy film festival could cause trouble. Rumor has it that my wife and Zaheo have an illicit relationship. Is that what everyone is talking about behind her back? Do people who are so skeptical have brains? Do you think you're smarter than me? I can't even find out that my wife is cheating. So you think you're very capable? So, why am I the CEO of Hai Rue and not you guys? Persimmons always pick the soft ones? President Mo, even if your wife is involved in a scandal, may I ask, what does it have to do with me?" Han Jie couldn't hold back his anger as he asked Mo Ting. "If it's someone else, it's fine. But you aren't innocent," Mo Ting said as he looked at Lu Che. Afterwards, Lu Che called in the security guard that was spreading the rumors. "I'm innocent. I didn't see it. I simply wanted to gossip. I never expected things to turn out this way," the security guard explained as he waved his hand. The bodyguard waved his hand and explained, "The one who told me about this was a young man wearing a hat. He said he saw it." "What kind of young man was he?" Mo Ting asked. "A young man wearing a white hat. In the middle of the hat, there was a big letter G." After hearing this, Han Jie's expression changed because this was the hat that Han Xiucha wore when he left the house. "This idiot. Is that him?" Mo Ting directly handed Lu Che a printed photo from the surveillance footage to the security guard. The security guard rubbed his eyes and confirmed that it was indeed him. "It's him. That's right, it's this young man." Lu Che held onto the photo and passed it around to the onlookers. Afterwards, Mo Ting's gaze returned to Han Jie. "President Han, don't you have something to say?" "This." Han Jie rubbed his forehead. He didn't know how to respond. Seeing this, Mo Ting gestured for Lu Che to show everyone his evidence. He then gestured for Lu Che to explain, "This man got out of your car and drove you here as your driver. But if you look closely at his outfit and aura, he's definitely not a driver. In that case, who is he? He is none other than President Han's brother, Han Xiucha. If you don't believe me, You can look up posts on social media related to the hat that Han Xiucha wore. There are a lot of posts about it. Previously, the madam and Han Xiucha had a grudge because of superstar media. Plus, Han Xiucha continued to frame her without repentance. He hasn't even knelt down as he promised, yet he's now trying to frame the madam for having an illicit relationship with someone else. President Han, shouldn't you take responsibility for this matter? Just like that, Han Jie was placed on the grill by Liu Che and revealed the truth in front of everyone. It turned out there was actually such a big conspiracy behind all this. President Han, you obviously knew about the relationship between Han Xiucha and the madam, yet you still brought him to the film festival. Do you have another plan? Because of this, I hope you can explain everything to the president and the madam. President Demo, I'm sure there's a misunderstanding here. Trust me. Is that all you can say? In reality, Mo Ting didn't expect Han Jie to react in any way. After all, if he was brave enough to step out and take the blame for Han Xiucha, he wouldn't be able to call him out on it. What did you and Zaheo talk about this afternoon? What made these people so excited? Obviously, Mo Ting's attitude towards Tongning had undergone a huge change. He now spoke in a gentle voice without a hint of questioning. His intention was for Tongning to speak her mind openly. Zaheo told me that he's planning to get engaged to Xingyan. He said that he's not young anymore and that it's time for him to have a child. So, I told him that it's time for him to settle down. That's the entire conversation. After hearing this, everyone came to a realization. Meanwhile, and Zaheo rolled his eyes, you've already exposed everything. How am I supposed to propose? Chapter 1067. Tongning shrugged her shoulders. I think innocence is more important. Meanwhile, the Han brothers' conversation, especially Han Xiucha's actions, completely angered Mo Ting. Don't live like a rat on the street. What can you do openly? President Han, I'm waiting for the day Han Xiucha kneels down and apologizes. After being humiliated in front of everyone, could Han Jie continue to attend the gala? Obviously not. While she sighed at Mo Ting's ruthlessness, she also felt her brother's head hurt. At a time like this, why did he use such underhanded methods to frame Tongning? It was bad enough that he framed her, but why did he have to be so lowly and ruthless? That's enough. Mo Ting clarified the truth in front of everyone and presented evidence. This cleared up the public's misunderstanding towards Tongning and deepened their hatred towards the Han brothers. Did Tongning look like someone that could be bullied? Following on, the gala went smoothly. Mo Ting insisted on taking Tongning to the end of the gala because he wanted to clarify certain things. Otherwise, as time passed, the atmosphere would change. As a result, the media revealed a lot of interesting things that happened at the gala. One of the most interesting things was the fact that the rumor mongers were caught in the act. Meanwhile, Tongning and Zaheo's conversation was released online. Han Xiucha was smart enough to only say words like child and stability to another person, allowing others to gossip and spread rumors. Afterwards, he used this to tarnish Tongning's reputation and achieve his goal of disgust. Afterwards, Mo Ting showed his courage as both a manager and a husband and openly discussed the matter online. He made it clear that this was the last time he was going to explain Tongning and Zaheo's relationship. They were simply friends. From the way Mo Ting acted at the event and how considerate and caring he was towards Tongning, anyone with eyes could tell that the couple had a deep relationship. Tongning looked into Mo Ting's eyes with sincerity. So, if anyone dared to use this incident to stir up trouble, Mo Ting was prepared to take legal action. As for everything that Han Xiucha has done, I hope you keep your promise and kneel down to apologize. At least, live like a man. Otherwise, not only would he be a man, he wouldn't even be a human. He would always bully a woman. The media was overjoyed. What happened at the film festival was even more exciting than the film festival itself, because the level of excitement was different. Wherever Tongning went, there would be gossip to write about. Of course, the strength that Mo Ting displayed this time proved that the time Tongning needed to prove her innocence in the past was now over. Now, Tongning had to focus on her film and Mo Ting had to shoulder the responsibility of being her manager. So, he had to protect Tongning flawlessly. In other words, whoever still wanted to pluck fur from the tiger's mouth, as long as they weren't afraid of death, come forward. The Han brothers were, of course, the most embarrassing existences in the entire film festival. As for Han Xiuqia, his IQ was obviously low and he was good at fighting. Han Jie was indeed furious. As soon as he returned home, he slapped Han Xiuqia across the face. You promised me that you wouldn't show your face at the film festival and you definitely wouldn't make a move. Did you know that Mo Ting demanded an explanation from me in front of so many people? Have you ever considered my feelings? Han Xiuqia covered his face and glared at Han Jie. There's definitely something wrong with them. That's enough. You rely on your imagination and suspicion to live your life. Don't you know that you're acting like a crazy person to me? Didn't Tongning reject you? That's why your pride was hurt, and you started to hate her. No, it's because she's a hypocrite. Don't bother explaining, Han Xiuqia. If you want to destroy me, then go ahead and continue, okay? Han Jie said before he slammed the door and left. In reality, Han Xiuqia had already seen the comments online. He simply wasn't on guard against Mo Ting. But next time, he wouldn't make the same mistake. Next time, he wanted there to be a next time. After returning home, Tongning didn't even bother to take off her shoes as she hugged Mo Ting. Do you know how charming you were today? Does that mean I'm not charming on a normal day? Mo Ting hugged her and took her to check on his 3 babies. They were currently fast asleep. On a normal day, the nutritionist and the 2 mothers would come over to help take care of the babies. If Tongning wasn't around and Mo Ting was busy, they would only leave after confirming that the babies were asleep. Luckily, the 3 siblings were fast asleep. So, Mo Ting carried Tongning into the bedroom and carried her to the bathroom to place her on the washstand. Let me take a look at your foot. It's fine, Tongning smiled. I didn't sprain my ankle. It's just that the heel of my shoe is damaged. I went to Qiao Sin's grave during the day, so I didn't notice because I was too careless. If Long Jie hadn't called in time, how would you have handled the situation tonight? Huh? Mo Ting held on to Tongning's chin and looked into her eyes. Do you know how much my heart ached when you stood on the stage? Everyone was waiting to see you embarrass yourself. What would you have done if I hadn't come? At most, I'd just embarrass myself. After all, you were the one that was embarrassed, Tongning laughed. But, seeing Mo Ting's serious expression, she finally replied honestly, I already embarrassed myself at a situation like that. I can't turn back time, but I can still resolve it. How could I be so weak? Tongning isn't a pushover. She wasn't in the past, she isn't now, and she will never be. That's enough. Hurry and have a bath. Mo Ting did not force her any further. He knew that Tongning would retaliate. But by that time, he would already be there, and there was no way he would watch as his wife was bullied. There's also Han Xiuqia's matter that needs to be dealt with. Have you already thought of a solution? Mo Ting asked as he helped Tongning remove her clothes. Tongning nodded. Since he made use of my fan club, then I can return the favor. I can make use of him by giving him the wrong information and giving him the wrong guidance. After that, I will force him to kneel down and apologize to me. Tongning nodded. After hearing this, Mo Ting gently patted Tongning on the head and kissed her passionately. No one is allowed to bully you. No one, not in the past, and not in the future. What if you bully me? Hearing this question, Mo Ting was a little surprised as he looked at her. Did I bully you? Aren't you bullying me right now? Tongning asked with a deeper meaning. Chapter 1068. Afterwards, it was time for the dress and clothes to fall to the ground. Amidst the yellow lights and smoke, the 2 were so intimate that they forgot how long the night was, because they were going to be extremely busy that night. The next day, news from the film festival appeared on the headlines of all the major media outlets. Among them, the most interesting ones weren't just Tongning's fight scenes, but also the fights that took place behind the scenes. For example, during photo shoots, the fight for the center seat. While gossiping, the fight in the bathroom. It was obvious how interesting the film festival was. But, no matter how you looked at it, Tongning was the most famous person. This was something that no one could deny. Afterwards, Long Jie grabbed the video of Han Xiucha spreading the rumors from Lu Che and watched it over and over again. She really wanted to give a jerk a slap to wake him up. Although the jerk is being scolded, he still refuses to show his face. He's such a coward. After watching the entire video, Tongning said to Long Jie, "Can the president of the fan club please cooperate and announce in the group chat that I'm inviting all members to watch the Ant Queen?" Of course, this will have to be arranged during the pre-screening. I'm sure Han Xiucha will find a way to watch the film in secret. As long as I'm prepared, I'll definitely be able to catch him at the theater. Okay, but the jerk is too thick-skinned, so we need to investigate his background as soon as possible. Otherwise, he will continue to appear in our line of sight and disgust us. Don't worry, Long Jie nodded. Lu Che and I will act separately. I'm sure we'll have some news soon. That's good. After discussing with Long Jie, Tongning rubbed her eyes tiredly. As soon as Long Jie saw this, she couldn't help but laugh. Even Boss doesn't restrain himself? You seem to know a lot, Tongning said as she nudged Long Jie's head. Get some rest. We're about to start our second round of promotions, and the pre-screening is just around the corner. You're about to face a test from the entire film industry. Okay. Tongning leaned back at her seat. She was still having a headache over the incident that the Han brothers mentioned. Although it wasn't difficult for her to clear her name, what if Han Xiucha didn't play by the rules? If he used this incident to exert pressure elsewhere, she would have to spend more time defending herself and repairing herself. In order not to arouse Han Xiucha's suspicions, Long Jie waited 2 to 3 days before she told the president to announce the news to the public. Of course, the fans cheered, and Han Xiucha, who had a fan account on his side, saw the news. As for why Tongning arranged this, apart from forcing him to reveal his real identity, she also wanted to attract Han Xiucha's attention. She wanted him to stop staring at the pre-screening and not think about playing any tricks. Lu Che had already decided on the invitation list for the pre-screening and, with Ting's confirmation, sent out invitations. Apart from those that Tongning specifically requested, Ting was in charge of everything else. In reality, at the film festival, the number of people that paid more attention to her than her films. Although the first round of promotions had already exploded, their anticipation for the film was nowhere near as high as their desire to see gossip. After all, it was a sci-fi movie. There were enough domestic scammers who relied on promotional videos to make money. Because film fans were familiar with these tricks, their anticipation for the Ant Queen wasn't as high as expected after the initial shock. Film fans had to admit that Tongning's films made them look forward to them more than a normal film. But that was all. If they wanted to gain recognition, they still needed to show that they were truly convinced of their abilities. After all, if they had heard that Tongning was going to make a film, especially a sci-fi one, they would have laughed, right? Of course, they also wanted to find the answer, but they were also afraid that Tongning would provide them with a plate of chocolate-like shit. They were both excited and nervous at the same time. In short, the pre-screening of the Ant Queen was just around the corner, and the second round of promotions followed closely behind. Ting said that they needed to choose a suitable production company to promote the Ant Queen in all aspects. With Tongning's help, the Ant Queen was naturally popular. So, Hairue saved a lot of manpower when it came to promotions. If it were any other artist, they would have had to spend 10 times more effort. But with Tongning, all they had to do was add fuel to the fire, and they could achieve twice the results with half the effort. Everything seemed to be going smoothly. But Han Jie, who was humiliated at the film festival, hated Han Xiucha for not living up to his expectations. But he was still an adult and had a status in the industry. Yet, he was humiliated in such a way in public. No one would be able to take it lying down. So, no matter what, he had to stand up for himself. Didn't Han Xiucha say that? Tongning's film was going to be a domestically produced film, but in reality, she was using the help of a Hollywood team. With this thought, Han Jie gave his secretary a phone call and asked her to look into the contact details of the best special effects company in the country. Since Tongning was using Hollywood, he was going to need evidence to convict her. So, he was going to hire a professional to verify her identity. That would be the best evidence, right? But he was smarter than Han Xiuqia. He carefully prepared everything so that he could give Tongning a surprise before the pre-screening. The pre-screening of The Ant Queen was held at one of Beijing's biggest cinemas. It was a hall that could hold up to 100 people. Many influential people from the film industry were present. They were excited, nervous, and, of course, afraid of being disappointed. After all, Tongning was the one who did it. But up to this point, they had no idea how to confirm Tongning's identity. But the strangest thing was, even those that enjoyed watching films did not underestimate Tongning's intentions. The test screening was scheduled for 3:30 in the afternoon. The audience had already entered the cinema one after another. However, half an hour into the movie, a piece of news immediately attracted a lot of people's attention. According to a professional, Tongning's new film, The Ant Queen, may be using domestically produced special effects, but it's not hard to find traces of a Hollywood team in it. Our reporters immediately interviewed the best special effects artist in the country and asked him to give us an answer. The special effects industry in the country has been developing rapidly in recent years. But from the promotional video for The Ant Queen, we can see traces of foreign techniques. Chapter 1069. In a moment, I will post some comparison photos. Although I know that Tongning wants to create a sci-fi film of our own, I think it's best to be honest. Yet this special effects artist actually accepted an interview with the media and dared to say that Tongning was faking it. I hope her fans don't attack me. I'm simply stating the truth. Afterwards, the reporters turned their cameras back to their faces and gave a summary. As we all know, the pre-screening of The Ant Queen will be taking place this afternoon. Based on the reports from the venue, most of the film festival staff have already arrived. But before the film has even started playing, a scandal has already been revealed that the special effects weren't made in China. So, when the people in the audience find out about this, will their mentality change? Let's see what everyone's reaction will be after the pre-screening of The Ant Queen. An explosive piece of news like this naturally spread at a shocking speed. So, in just a few minutes, news of Tongning lying had already spread like wildfire. Afterwards, Long Jie immediately relayed the news to Tongning. But as she looked at the hall filled with people and Tongning stood at the back of the hall, she realized it was too late to do anything about it. Even if everyone was biased, it would have to wait until the pre-screening was over before making any further decisions. Where did this trashy special effects artist come from? Is he spouting nonsense again? Tongning wanted to affect the viewing experience. Go out first and get a better understanding of the situation. The pre-screening has already started. Let them watch the film in peace. Tongning pushed Long Jie out of the theater. From the moment she announced her comeback to this day, every single time she had crawled through a quagmire. She had always been covered in mud. So, this time, even if it wasn't too late to do anything about it, she still wanted to see how people would react after watching the film. As expected, Fan Yu and Hua Jingjing were seated in the audience. As soon as he saw Tongning standing at the back, he also stood up and walked to the back to accompany her. I've already seen the news. You believe it too? Where did this special effects artist come from? Does he think he can represent authority? Hua Jingjing laughed. Of course I believe in you. No matter what the result was, Tongning felt everything was worth it with Hua Jingjing's words. What was there to be afraid of? She and her team had put in a lot of effort to come up with this. It wasn't something that could be deviated by a single authoritative person. You should also try to trust the media for once. Let's see which side they stand on this time. You can't always go against them. Tongning understood what Hua Jingjing was trying to say, so she nodded her head and gave Mo Ting a phone call. She told him not to do any PR. After all, the news had already spread. If they removed the trending topic at a time like this, it would raise suspicions. That's the way to be confident. Trust me. After speaking, Hua Jingjing patted Tongning on the shoulder and gestured with her chin. Go ahead, your seat is at the front. After speaking, Hua Jingjing returned to her seat and focused on the movie on the big screen. Tongning let go of all her distracting thoughts and nervousness. While watching the film, she was reminded of every little detail of her time with Xiao Senator at the same time. His excited and warm smile was constantly reminding her. Don't be afraid, don't retreat. You didn't do anything wrong. Be brave. There were 134 people in the audience at the pre-screening. Among them were authoritative figures in the film industry, sci-fi enthusiasts, fans, film critics, and a few good friends in the industry. While watching the film, almost no one fell asleep. In fact, no one even went to the bathroom. Just like that, 2 hours passed by, although, due to Nzaheo replacing Xiao Sun in post-production, it was obvious that there was a difference in the way the film was shot. But, as the cast list appeared on the huge screen and the lights came back on, Tongning noticed most people were still sitting in their seats without getting up. Tongning, someone called out from behind her. She quickly stood up. I trust you. Before Tongning could see who was speaking, a few more people stood up from their seats and said, We trust you too. We trust you too. And us. Gradually, everyone in the theater stood up and expressed their stance. Back then, because of the media's nonsense, we lost a good actor and you announced your retirement from filming. Today, a year later, the same thing is happening. I'm afraid that if I stand on the wrong side again, I'll lose another good producer. A film critic approached Tongning and extended his hand towards her. Tongning froze for a second before she also extended her hand. I don't know if you've convinced anyone else, but you've convinced me. Thank you. Tongning's eyes turned slightly red. A moment later, the theater erupted into a thunderous applause. You've also convinced me. Me too. At this moment, Tongning turned around and looked at everyone in the theater. She then bowed deeply. Your affirmation means a lot to me. If Xiao Sen's spirit is watching from above, he would be comforted, because the film is truly worthy of praise. I don't know how others felt about it, but when I first saw the giant termites on the screen, I immediately thought, was this the rumor that the film had borrowed the help of Hollywood's special effects? As I continued to watch, I realized it wasn't. Because I've worked in Hollywood in the past. I participated in the production of a lot of blockbusters, like Feast of the Baron and, for example, Angela's Secret. So, I'm sure no one has a better say than me. Everyone in the theater was shocked by the film critic's words. In the past, I've always been the one to pick on domestically produced films because I wanted them to improve. So, I'm sorry. Even if there wasn't a scandal about you lying, I was still here to complain. But, after watching it, I suddenly felt like crying, because you've made me feel ashamed. We both want films to grow, but I chose to criticize them, while you went ahead and did it. You went from being a model to being an actress. You started from nothing. On the other hand, after spending so many years in Hollywood, I never thought about making my own film because I was afraid. You've made me feel ashamed. Tongning shook her head. You're exaggerating. Chapter 1070. If the public continues to scold you because of this baseless slander, I will be the first to speak up for you. Of course, I will also keep an eye on you. When the film is officially released, I will take my entire family to the theater to watch it. That's all for today. After speaking, the 40-something-year-old man turned to leave. But, just as he was about to leave, someone noticed him wiping a tear from his eye. Afterwards, someone ran a background check on him and discovered that this film critic had actually worked in Hollywood for many years and had even appeared on Time magazine. But, regardless of everything, the audience at the pre-screening were relieved. Even though they hadn't fully recovered from the film, they at least knew that the Ant Queen did not disappoint them and that Tongning did not disappoint them. Not long after, the film ended. A group of reporters had already gathered at the entrance of the theater, waiting to hear everyone's ridicule towards Tongning. So, as soon as a member of the audience stepped out, the media immediately surrounded them. Of course, the film critic that had spoken to Tongning earlier was also stopped by the media. You've already seen the film. Can you comment on Tongning's claim that it's a domestically produced film? She said it's a domestically produced film. What's wrong with that? The man asked. But the top special effects artist in the country has already stepped out to slap Tongning in the face. He's top? Who's he think he is? The man retorted. Tell him, if he dares to say that he's top in front of me, I will answer your question. Are you saying that Tongning didn't lie to the audience? Why would she lie to the audience? Does she lack popularity or the box office? That young lady, as a reporter, please be more positive and give Tongning more positive comments. Don't keep digging for gossip. After speaking, the man walked out of the reporter's sight. The reporters were a little confused by the man's response. At this time, they had no idea who they were interviewing. All they knew was they originally thought that after watching Tongning's film, they would have a lot to complain about. But from the looks of the interview, that didn't seem to be the case. So, the pre-screening came to an end with the scandal of Tongning lying to the public. But no one stepped out to comment on their feelings towards the film. Was it good or was it shit? Everyone had a secretive look on their faces. Could it be that the movie was really that bad? No. The few lucky fans who watched the movie came out to say, "My Ning is awesome. This is the best sci-fi film I've ever seen." After the movie ended, even a Hollywood film critic praised her. Really, it's so good. My Ning is the best. But in the eyes of the average person, fans had a thick layer of filters. So, onlookers assumed that there were elements of exaggeration involved and that Hollywood and film critics were just exaggerating. Who would believe the words of a fan? He was willing to die for his idol. Naturally, no one would believe him. That's enough. Tongning leaked shit. Her fans will say it's good. This bragging is a little too much. It makes people feel very frivolous. I don't think there's anything to see. Besides, didn't they say that the Hollywood team would handle the post-production? If that's the case, why don't I watch a real Hollywood movie? On the internet, many people expressed their ridicule towards the fans, causing them to vomit blood in anger. But not long after, the first review of The Ant Queen was posted online. It turned out it wasn't that people didn't have any reaction, it was that they had to wait for time. Otherwise, they would feel that they were letting down Tongning's hard work and how amazing the film was. I admit that The Ant Queen is the best domestic sci-fi film. If you're not convinced, then hold it in. Why did you only post it a few hours later? That's because I felt that I wasn't sincere enough and that I was letting down the people behind the scenes, especially director Chiao San, who passed away because of it. So, after returning home, I sat in front of my computer in a daze. I'm sure most people that watched the film felt the same way as me. Before watching The Ant Queen, I was already very nervous. Then, with the scandal of Tongning lying to the public and the fact that she used Hollywood to create special effects, I thought to myself, it's over. But after watching it, I slapped myself in the face. That's because I hated myself. When I heard that an actress was involved in a film, the first thing that came to my mind was to ridicule her. Reality has proven that Tongning is indeed the best in the industry when it comes to face slapping. I would like to formally apologize to her and sincerely ask the media to stop spreading rumors about Tongning's special effects. I would also like to ask the self-proclaimed special effects artist to return to his planet. I don't want to see him anymore. That's just something that I've said. Next up, let's get into The Ant Queen. What I want to tell you is what I found so amazing about this film. Following on, the second review. The third review, that was until the film critic that once worked for Hollywood revealed his opinion. No, he didn't use words, he used a video. As soon as this man appeared on screen, everyone could see the bookshelf behind him. It was filled with classic foreign films, and some of them were films that he had participated in. It was because of this video that the media discovered that this hidden expert had already been interviewed the previous night. The main reason I recorded this video is to tell everyone that The Ant Queen's post-production did not involve Hollywood. How can I be so certain? It's because I've worked in Hollywood before. Also, as soon as I returned home, I called a friend in the U.S. to confirm that Tongning did indeed take a team to the U.S. But they did their own research and did not use any Hollywood team or technology. I don't know how the self-proclaimed special effects artist was able to tell that the Ant Queen was fake. Perhaps he has a pair of eyes that can see through everything. But I can confidently tell everyone that the Ant Queen is 100% domestically produced and has no problems at all. The reason I'm clarifying here is so that everyone can look at this film without prejudice. If you have the contact details of the special effects artist for a domestically produced sci-fi film, The Ant Queen, please let me know. I will personally speak to him. Lastly, don't ask me stupid questions like whether The Ant Queen is good. Chapter 1071. The more serious Tongning is about acting, the more serious she is about making a film. She managed to win over a sci-fi fan like me, so I'm sure she won't disappoint you. These are all the heartfelt words that I want to say after watching the movie. Oh, by the way, I remember now. Previously, a fan mentioned that a Hollywood critic praised Tongning during the pre-screening. If it's true, it was me. It turned out, the seemingly exaggerated fan's words were actually true. Everyone's eyes popped out of their sockets. Afterwards, the video was reposted online like crazy, and of course, the Ant Queen's reputation was also established. Of course, with these kinds of reviews and promotions, the self-proclaimed top special effects artist had no choice but to hide. In fact, he even wanted to erase the stupid words he said. He had to admit that he accepted Han Jie's money to ride on the hype. But it seemed he had lifted a rock and smashed it on his own foot. Top in the country was actually an exaggeration. After the pre-screening ended, the response was huge. The Ant Queen had indeed received good reviews. With this wave of testing the waters, film fans were now waiting for the film to be released as soon as possible. Previously, I was afraid that the film would look terrible. But now that an internet celebrity and a professional critic have stepped out to praise the film, I've changed my mind. I want to see how good the film is. I heard that the special effects are exciting and the scenes are exciting. The entire film is so exciting that it can fly. I want to see the transparent body of a termite. It's said that it's as big as a screen. Just thinking about it makes me excited. Io, hurry up and release the film. Amidst the anticipation of the film fans, Tongning finally saw hope for the Ant Queen. At this moment, she felt like crying. If Qiao-san was still around and could see this, how happy would he be? Because of this, Tongning decided to give Qiao-san's daughter a ticket to the film. She wanted to tell her that she had fulfilled Qiao-san's wish and dream. The Ant Queen was about to be released, but after the pre-screening, Mo Ting began to investigate where the so-called top special effects artist came from, who gave him the courage to expose Tongning's lies at such a delicate time. President, according to our investigation, quite a few people have approached this special effects artist recently. But one of them is the most suspicious, Lu Che explained to Mo Ting. Han Jie. He must be angry at you for not showing him any mercy at the film festival. Or perhaps he's trying to get revenge for his brother. Either way, he is definitely related to the madam's incident. Lu Che replied respectfully. Should we think of a way? Send word to the people in the industry to suppress them. Make sure they can't take care of themselves first before they find a way to deal with them, Mo Ting said coldly. What's the other document in your hands? Madam asked little Manny to investigate the background of the two brothers. I have some clues, and I'm going to send them to her, Lu Che replied. Send it over as soon as possible. These two brothers were both asking for a beating. In that case, they could not blame others for deliberately dealing with them. Indeed, after the pre-screening, Tongning had already decided to expose Han Xiucha in broad daylight. If she didn't deal with this shady man as soon as possible, he would continue to cause trouble in the future. Afterwards, Tongning received the information on the two brothers. Lu Che put in a lot of effort to get his hands on this. No wonder. The waters are so deep. Of course, the two brothers wouldn't want others to see them. Their mother cheated on them with more than one man. That's why she divorced the brothers' father and left them to their father to raise. Perhaps because of this, the two brothers have a deep misunderstanding of women. This explains why Han Xiucha always thinks you're a hypocrite. Now that we know the background of these two jerks, what do you plan to do? I'm going to get him to come out and apologize first. He can go on endlessly since the incident at Superstar Media, but I can't. I don't want to waste my time on a piece of trash, Tongning replied. So, we'll stick to our original plan. In 2 days, we'll deal with the matter. When the time comes, are you going to go personally? Long Ji asked. In reality, she was hoping that Tongning would show up. After all, Han Xiuqia had been causing trouble for her for a long time. Of course I'm going. I have something to ask him. Tongning lifted her eyes with a cold gaze. At this time, Tongning had no idea that the so-called special effects artist was actually the work of the two brothers. Afterwards, it wasn't until she heard the entire story from Mo Ting that she realized that even Han Jie had been implicated by Han Xiuqia. She couldn't allow the two brothers to continue leading her around like a hooligan. Apart from finding a way to defeat them psychologically, she had no other choice. After all, she couldn't kill them. So, Tongning thought of information on the two brothers' mother. Afterwards, she gave Long Jie a phone call. Can you find the mother of the two brothers? What do you want? I want to treat the two brothers. If I continue to suppress them, they will only continue to retaliate. Especially Han Xiuqia. He doesn't care about his image in front of the public. Even if I lose my reputation, I don't think I can stop him. So, while we're trying to find him, we also need to find their mother. Okay. Long Jie nodded her head and immediately began to look for clues on the two brothers' mother. The Ant Queen's trailer had been released, the pre-screening had been released, and the official release date was about to be confirmed. But Han Xiuqia still refused to let it go. Although she no longer had anything to slander, she was afraid that Han Xiuqia would continue to target the people around her. So, the root of everything still lay with Han Xiuqia's mother. Long Jie knew that it was urgent to deal with the two brothers, so she immediately looked into the woman's background. In the end, she found some reliable information. The woman with the surname Su was also in the industry, but she never showed her face in public. She was currently a voice actress that worked behind the scenes for television dramas. But after being in the industry for so long, Long Jie had never heard of this person. She originally thought that the two brothers hated this woman so much that they wouldn't let her off so easily. So, how was she able to survive in the industry? Chapter 1072. Long Jie relayed the results of her investigation to Tongning and expressed her curiosity. I don't understand the two brothers. If they don't provoke their cheating mother, why do they keep harping on you? In that case, let's go meet the dubber. Perhaps there's something else they're hiding. Tongning replied. Go make the arrangements. I want to meet the dubber. Okay, I'll do my best, Long Jie nodded. A mother cheating on two men and being caught in the act by her father was nothing more than a scandal in the entertainment industry. After all, it wasn't the Han family's first day in the industry. Afterwards, the Han brothers' father remarried to his secretary and never had another child. As for their mother, there was no news of her. Because of his mother, Han Xiuqia's personality was flawed. So, Tongning was the unlucky one that happened to bump into Han Xiuqia's gun. Now that she thought about it, she felt quite wronged. What was even stranger was the fact that when Long Jie tried to meet someone, she couldn't get them. How could there be someone in the entertainment industry that Tongning couldn't invite? Perhaps the dubber knew that there was a grudge between Tongning and her son. Mo Ting realized that he had failed to contact the dubber, so he revealed a secret to Tongning. The reason why she doesn't want to see you has nothing to do with the two brothers. She simply wants to avoid arousing suspicion. It's that simple. How do you know all this? The information in Long Jie's hands was compiled by Lu Che. I asked him to investigate a lot of insider information, Mo Ting said as he handed the information to Tongning. This woman, after divorcing the father of the two brothers, has been with this man for 20 years. She doesn't even ask for an official title. Right now, the last thing she wants is to have anything to do with the two brothers. I'm guessing the reason why Han Xiuqia wants to blow things up to this extent is because he wants to attract this woman's attention. Who's her current man? International martial arts superstar, Long Qingyun. How could it be him? He was a senior in the industry. How could she not know him? However, she had never thought that there would be such a complicated relationship between the two of them. So, she was a bit presumptuous when she asked Long Jie to invite someone. It was true that she had some misgivings since the others did not come, but was she going to continue to be entangled with the two brothers? Seeing Tongning's helpless expression, Mo Ting patted her on the head and smiled. What? Are you scared? Are there things that you're afraid of? I'm just annoyed. Tongning leaned against Mo Ting with a tired expression. If you ask Long Jie to invite an international kung fu superstar, will they even respond? Of course not. So, the person you should look for is me, not Long Jie. If I appear, even if the other party is unwilling, they will at least give me some face. You definitely did it on purpose. Mo Ting smiled dotingly as he stood up from the sofa and returned to the study room. In fact, this kung fu superstar, who was nearly 60 years old, might not get what he wanted even if he personally went to invite him. So, Tongning had no idea how many phone calls Mo Ting had made that night. Before he left the house that morning, he reminded, "Remember to turn off your phone today." What happened? All of a sudden, Tongning didn't understand what Mo Ting meant. That was until she received a phone call from an unknown number. "Hello, this is Suyu. I heard you wanted to see me." "Hello, senior. Is it convenient for you? Your husband called my husband 67 times in one night. I don't think I have any reason to reject him," the woman said before she arranged a time and place to meet Tongning. Afterwards, Tongning told Long Jie not to rush into finding out about Han Xiuqi's matter. Everything would be decided after they met with the voice actor. The meeting was set for 8 p.m. at a hotel near the television station Suyu was working at. Accompanying her was her little assistant, who looked very obedient and well-behaved. Tongning did not ask Mo Ting to follow her. She only brought Long Jie with her. She felt this was a conversation between women, and it would be inconvenient for a man to be present. This was Tongning's first time seeing Suyu. Upon closer inspection, Suyu noticed that there was something wrong with the way she walked. Seeing Tongning's gaze, Suyu understood what she was confused about, so she replied, "I was beaten up many years ago." "Sorry, senior." Suyu smiled. Although she was old without any makeup, she still had a charming elegance to her, especially her eyes. How could Tongning believe that a woman like this would cheat on her husband? Suyu was skinny, but she was charming. Although she didn't dress up, she must have put a lot of effort into maintaining her appearance. There's nothing to be sorry about. After all, you're not the first person to be curious. Let's get back to the point. I've seen you on the news before, so I'm not curious as to why you came looking for me. But I really can't help you. After hearing this, Tongning took a deep breath. "Senior Su, we're both women and it's not easy for us. I understand, but I really want to know if there's a way to make the two brothers stop. I can defeat them, but I don't want to waste my time on meaningless things. I can't possibly kill them. That's why I took the liberty of contacting you." "I understand," Suyu nodded her head, but she added a sentence with a deeper meaning. "You're indeed his son. Senior, I really can't help you. But I can tell you why," Suyu explained. 20 years ago, I was living with Han Yufan. I took care of my two sons without any regrets. But I discovered he was cheating on me with his secretary. At that time, I was weak. Han Yufan threatened me that if I dared to expose this matter, he would destroy my reputation. I was too stupid, so I endured their humiliation. But Han Yufan refused to get a divorce, so the secretary became anxious. In order to climb up the ladder, she set up 2 men to humiliate me. Han Yufan even found out and accused me of cheating. It was at that time that Han Yufan broke my leg. At the time, my eldest son was hiding behind the door. I asked him to call for help, but he ran over to my secretary and hugged her, screaming in fear. That is a scene I will never forget. So, I really don't want to have anything to do with the 2 brothers. Tongning, I've looked into your past, and I know what kind of person you are. So, I'm not afraid that you'll laugh at me for telling you this. After hearing this simple story, Tongning was reminded of the things that Han Yufan and Mo Euro had done to her in the past. "I won't laugh at you, and I won't disturb you again. I'm sorry, senior. I will resolve my grudge with the 2 brothers on my own. But I really don't want you to get involved again," Tongning replied. "After all, I've been through the same thing before." Chapter 1073. After hearing Tongning's words, Suyu laughed. "I really can't help you." Tongning shook her head in relief. She indeed wanted to get rid of the 2 brothers, but she wouldn't stoop so low as to take advantage of someone else's wound. She herself had been stepped on, so she naturally understood Su Yu's pain. On the way home, Long Jie couldn't help but ask, "Do you believe Su Yu's words?" Back then, a lot of people knew that she was caught in bed with another man. Tongning did not respond. Plus, why was she willing to reveal something so private to you after meeting you for the first time? Because she didn't want you to look for her again, Tongning replied. I didn't just believe her words out of thin air, but based on the information that you and Ting have given me, I believe Su Yu's words more. You know better than I do what the Han brothers are like. Don't you think that, as a father, he shouldn't take responsibility for a son like that? But, just to be on the safe side, you should investigate this matter. If the father and son really did something like that to Su Yu, then the Han brothers would have ended up worse than Han Yufan. They are indeed both Han brothers. In some ways, they are surprisingly similar. After hearing Tongning's instructions, Long Jian nodded her head. Don't worry, I will investigate this matter as soon as possible. In that case, should we continue with the matter of Han Xiucha? Of course. This is a promise that we made. Tongning never broke her promise. This was her bottom line. After returning home, Tongning recounted her conversation with Su Yu to Mo Ting. She couldn't help but sigh. Once a woman marries the devil, her life is destroyed. Mo Ting knew this brought back bad memories, so he reached out his hand and gently stroked her back. But there aren't many women like you who would stand up and fight back. Because I've never felt that I'm worse than a man, Tongning replied. In my heart, you are stronger than anyone else. These were Mo Ting's honest words. Apart from Tongning, he had never seen another woman that could remain calm and not break down in the face of crisis. In fact, she could even be described as calm. So, when it comes to dealing with the two brothers, do what you need to do. Do you think a small agency can beat Hai Rui? They should be dragged out to apologize. He should be dragged out to kneel. Don't let any of them go. After hearing Mo Ting's words, Tongning rubbed her head against his palm. This man gave her a sense of security and courage. Okay, Tongning nodded. How obedient. So, when it came to Han Xiucha, Tongning had no intention of backing down. Now that the Ant Queen was about to be released, what else could Han Xiucha do? What else do you want to change? The next day, Long Jie spent an entire day investigating. In the end, she concluded that at least 80% of what Su Yu said was true. Especially Father Han's current wife, who used to be his secretary. She was the biggest problem and left the most clues. According to the woman's previous address, I asked the neighbors around her. Some people even remembered that there used to be a man who drove a Bentley and often drove her home. Once the car was hit and the car was shaken. I also found out that Father Han used to drive a Bentley. At the same time, I've also looked into Su Yu's character. She abides by the rules of a woman and is indeed gentle and dutiful. So, what Su Yu said was the truth. The father and son trio didn't just become so disgusting. They've been disgusting from the beginning. After hearing Long Jie's words, Tongning had already come to a conclusion. You must be tired. Go home and get some rest. As for arranging a film for the fans, it's about time. Let's drag Han Xiucha out and make him kneel before us. Okay, Long Jie nodded. Tongning, of course, couldn't care less about the millions of unfair things that happened in this world. But the two brothers had already offended her for too long. Han Xiucha had no idea that it was a trap. All he knew was that Tongning had invited fans to watch a film. So he, of course, decided to watch the film that was known as a masterpiece. Meanwhile, inside the theater, Long Jie and the theater manager deliberately arranged for a screening near the entrance. They wanted Han Xiucha to be immediately blocked outside as soon as he appeared. If he didn't know that his mother was being framed, it wouldn't be a big deal. But when he knew, he still hated women to the core. This meant that evil was in his genes. Did he look down on women? This time, he was going to kneel before them. Meanwhile, after Tongning came looking for her, Su Yu tried to find out more about the grudge between Tongning and Han Xiucha. After understanding the situation, she felt a deep sense of guilt. Old Long, this woman is obviously shouldering my pain. She's still young. Let her shoulder it. Didn't she say that she doesn't blame you? But those two people came from my stomach. If it was anyone else, it wouldn't be a big deal. But Tangning's situation is similar to mine, yet she managed to live her own life. I admire her, but I also feel guilty. After all, she is the mother of 3 children. I can't eat or sleep well. So, I want to help her, Suyu said to her husband. Old Long, after all these years, apart from you, she's the only one that's been willing to understand my pain. In that case, how do you want to help? The man, who was called Old Dragon, took a blanket from the room and put it on his wife's body. Are you going to open your wound again? Because I lost my innocence and reputation, you've been scolded badly all these years, Suyu said as she leaned back in her chair. Suyu leaned back in her chair and said to her husband, "That's why I insisted that you not announce your marriage. Even if people say I'm your mistress, I don't want you to be judged behind your back. The last thing I want is to see you get hurt. So, why don't we get Tongning to prove my innocence? I've seen the news and know that she once founded Superstar Media and helped a lot of artists that are past their prime. If that's what you want to do, I will support you. But if you feel that the pain is too much for you to bear, then give up. Don't forget, your husband is still an international martial arts superstar. Even though he was old, he was still respected and his words still carried weight. Since you've agreed, I'm going to look for that woman again. Back then, I couldn't explain myself and ended up crippling my right leg. Now, I've even implicated an innocent person. I can't continue to hold on to the truth and hide it any longer. I want to stand out and speak up." Chapter 1074. So you made up her mind. In fact, she was afraid that she would regret her decision. So she contacted Tongning late at night. Originally, I didn't want to have anything to do with the brothers for the rest of my life. But when I thought about how an honest and kind person is still suffering because of me, I couldn't bear to see them suffer. If you hadn't come looking for me, I might have been able to console myself that you could handle this matter. But you came looking for me. Tongning, if you're willing to help me wash away the grievances I suffered all those years ago, perhaps you can bring down the Han family. Let me be honest with you. It's not that I'm selfless. But trust me, if someone else was in my shoes, I wouldn't have made the same decision. I understand. After all, who would want to reopen old wounds? If you're willing, then I'm willing to step forward. Of course I'm willing. But we need to have enough evidence, Tongning replied. We can't rush it. But with your help, I'm sure we have a good chance of clearing our name. As long as you need it, I'll help you at any time. Thank you, Senior Sue. After Tongning hung up the phone, she noticed Mo Ting had also woken up. As he leaned against the headboard, she looked at him apologetically. Sorry for waking you up. Has Suyu agreed to help? Yes, but she wants me to help her clear up the scandal from 20 years ago. She's definitely not going to accept the way the Han family treated her. Plus, she's been carrying a bad reputation all these years, so I'm sure she hasn't been living a good life. So, it's within my expectations that she would think this way. I definitely need to help you with this. I think the reason why Han Shiocha refuses to let go is because of Suyu. Mo Ting did not say a word. He simply pulled Tongning into his embrace. Tomorrow, I'll get Lu Che to start investigating and preparing evidence. When the time is right, we'll dig up the old news and make it a hot topic. Han Shiocha is a big problem. I'll only be at ease if he's dealt with. Mo Ting lowered his head and placed a gentle kiss on Tongning's forehead. Go to sleep. In reality, Han Jie found out that Long Jie had investigated the brother's stepmother. As soon as he found out that Tongning was paying attention to the matter, he naturally felt guilty. So, he immediately went to look for Han Shiocha. Although the two had an argument, they were still brothers, so it was impossible for them to stop contacting each other. Tongning is investigating our background. In order to suppress that woman's scandal, Father has put in a lot of effort. We can't let Tongning dig up the past. She wants to know how that woman played a three-way game with someone else? Han Shiocha asked. No matter what, quickly warn her to stop. Otherwise, I really don't know what I'll do. You're all lowly women bitches. After relaying the news to his brother, Han Jie returned home. But from Han Shiocha's words, it wasn't hard to tell that he had a misunderstanding towards Suyu. Actually, this part wasn't too hard to guess. After all, Han Jie was the only one that witnessed his mother being slandered and injured in the leg. Han Xiuqia had no idea. So, lying to Han Xiuqia was a piece of cake. But if Han Xiuqia found out the truth about what happened back then, the most exciting drama between the two brothers was about to unfold at that moment. Han Xiuqia knew that Tongning was using their scandal to her advantage. So he was furious. But Tongning did say that she would arrange for her fans to watch the Ant Queen. This was her right as the producer, so she hoped that Han Xiuqia wouldn't let her down. But before the film was to be watched, Long Jie received some good news from the president of the fan club. They had discovered who the problematic fan was. Perhaps it was because she had accepted money from Han Xiuqia, but just like Long Jie had guessed, the fan social circle had undergone a huge change. In the past, she didn't have to worry about food or clothing. But in a short period of time, she began to show off her branded bag and her father's new mid-range car. After the president discovered these changes, she kept an eye on this phone number and realized that she was indeed different from before. As she was a student, there were times when she would go online and go offline. But recently, she had been offline the entire time. The president suspected that she had always been online, but had simply gone invisible. So, she pretended to notify the fan and left a message. But the fan replied in a matter of seconds. This proved that her guess was correct. Afterwards, I contacted the fan. After crying and screaming, she finally confessed that she had accepted money from Han Xiuqia, Long Jie said. So, we now know exactly which fan is under Han Xiuqia's control. You only know that he's under control of one account, but you can't rule out the possibility that there's no other account. Even if that's the case, I still feel that Han Xiuqia is too sneaky. He's not like a man, he's more like a woman. Long Jie let out a gentle laugh. I can't believe he even came up with a trick like infiltrating your fan club. If he was a man, he wouldn't kneel down right now. Plus, by infiltrating my fan club, he knows a lot of my plans. That's not surprising at all. Tongning replied. He's a complete piece of trash. Long Jie could only comment. If Han Xiuqia had even the slightest bit of shame, he wouldn't have ended up like this. This was perhaps the man with the least bit of pride that Tongning had ever encountered. Just wait and see. I'm going to make him publicly apologize to you at the theater. There's nothing you can do about a person like this. All you can do is continue to bully and suppress him. After all, he asked for it. Long Jie shrugged helplessly. The Ant Queen was extremely busy with its follow-up promotions. But the jerk simply wouldn't let go. Since that was the case, then, like Ting said, those that deserved to kneel should kneel. There was nothing she could do about it. After all, it was common for Tongning to invite her fans to a screening of her film. But no one would invite their fans to a screening of their film before it was even released. But since the pre-screening had already been held and the follow-up promotions had already been announced, all that was left was to decide on a release date. From the looks of it, there wasn't much of a problem. Of course, no one knew that Tongning had already set up a trap at the theater and was simply waiting for Han Xiuqia to appear. Meanwhile, Long Jie and Lu Che were busy collecting evidence. After all, if they wanted to retaliate against the brothers, they needed to have a stone hammer. Tongning had worked so hard to film this film and even sacrificed Xiao Sen's life for it. So, she had to ensure that the Ant Queen didn't have a single piece of trash during its release. Chapter 1075. Inviting her fans to watch the film before its official release wasn't just meaningful to the fans. It also proved how confident Tongning was in her film. That night, all the fans were envious of Tongning's fans. This gave Tongning's fans the right to be proud. Didn't you say that Tongning didn't care about us? Then, could your idol disregard the risks and costs and invite her fans to watch the film before its official release? No. Even if your idol was willing, he wouldn't have the right to make decisions. But Tongning could. After all, she was the producer, so she could make all the important decisions in the film. This made the fans especially proud, and they could show their confidence no matter where they went. 7 p.m. Fans from the official fan club gathered at the cinema. The film was to be screened at 7:30 p.m. The fans that were invited this time were the main management staff of the fan club. Because of their free contribution, the fan club's activities were very orderly and standard. This also prevented the other fans from feeling that they were being treated unfairly. After all, they all witnessed the hard work of the management staff. Moreover, Tongning had promised that after the official release, she would arrange for a nationwide screening for her fans. So, the fans felt that Tongning was warm and considerate. However, 15 minutes later, Han Xiuqia actually appeared at the cinema. However, he couldn't show his face in public because he had already appeared on the news. So, he had no choice but to disguise himself as a staff member and sneak into the screening room. However, he had no idea that his every move was being monitored by the cinema. Long Jie shook her head in confusion. I can't believe the jerk actually showed up. The incident with the special effects for the Ant Queen has already been clarified. The pre-screening has already been held, and the film is about to be released. What else does he want to cause you? Can you believe that he doesn't want to miss out on any opportunities? If we don't stop him after watching the film, he will definitely make things difficult for you before the official release. Plus, even if we manage to stop him today, I don't think he'll actually apologize. Then, wouldn't your plan be for nothing? No, it's useful, Tongning replied mysteriously. Okay. Long Jie watched as Han Xiuqia hid in the corner like a coward. So, she couldn't understand why someone would put themselves in such a pathetic state. The movie is about to start. Everything goes according to plan. Okay, Long Jie nodded. Tongning stood to one side and watched the trash curled up in the dark through the black and white screen. All he could do was hide in that place and never see the light of day. Soon, the movie started playing. After Han Xiuqia observed his surroundings, he entered the studio. However, he was interrupted by a staff member. Sir, non-staff are not allowed in here. Han Xiuqia's disguise failed, so he turned around to leave. But, as he turned around, he bumped into a customer. At this time, Long Jie walked past Han Xiuqia. As soon as she saw him, she immediately called out, Han Xiuqia? Han Xiuqia panicked. He wanted to leave, but Long Jie stopped him. Where are you going? As soon as they heard Long Jie shout, the cinema staff immediately rushed over. Why are you here? Haven't you harmed our Tongning enough? Now you still want to cause trouble in the cinema? Are you a jerk? As soon as they heard Tongning's name, the audience immediately surrounded him. Many even pulled out their phones to capture Han Xiuqia's embarrassed expression. I just happened to pass by. He's not a coincidence. The cinema staff said as they ran over to Long Jie. He just walked into our studio and tried to wear my clothes. Let go. Are you trying to detain me? Han Xiuqia struggled free from the security guard's grip. Everyone in Beijing knows that you've tried to frame Tongning multiple times. Yet, you've suddenly appeared in a cinema. What are you trying to do? Long Jie asked. Plus, since you've made an appearance today, shouldn't you pay back what you owe me? I told you it was just a coincidence. Han Xiuqia said to the security guard. Tongning hasn't done anything to hurt you. How are you going to hurt her? So it's him. The Han Xiuqia that's been arguing with Tongning's fans. The one that made a bet with Long Jie online and said that if he lost, he would have to kneel down and apologize. Didn't he go into hiding? Why has he suddenly appeared again? Who knows why he snuck into the cinema again? I'm sure everyone knows that Tongning is treating her fans to a film tonight. What embarrassment to men. Coward. Kneel down, coward. The onlookers in the cinema began to mock Han Xiuqia. You're not even going to admit to what you said. I've never seen a man worse than you. He's worse than my ex. Seeing everyone pointing at him, Han Xiuqia sneered at Long Jie. If you tell Tongning to come out right now, I may admit to kneeling down and apologizing to her. Tongning doesn't want to see you. You're not worthy. Long Jie replied. Since that's the case, I'm afraid you'll never get the apology that you want. What could Long Jie do to a shameless person like him? Plus, you just happened to appear at the same time that I appeared at the cinema. Don't tell me you've been planning to ambush me from the start. Do you want me to kneel that badly? Let me tell you, before you see Tongning, there's no point in talking. Long Jie didn't know what to say. After all, she was a civilized person. But Han Xiuqia obviously wasn't. So, you're saying that as soon as Tongning comes out, you will apologize to her, right? Long Jie asked. Is that what you're trying to say? Han Xiuqia looked at Long Jie and sneered. This is a public place. If Tongning dares to appear, I will kneel down. Fine, you said it yourself. After speaking, Long Jie gave Tongning a phone call and explained the situation to her. Do you want to see Han Xiuqia? Since that's what he asked, then I will naturally satisfy him. Han Xiuqia looked at Long Jie provocatively. There were so many people present. If Tongning really showed up, he was going to embarrass her. Long Jie knew what he was planning. After hanging up the phone, she said, I hope you won't go back on your word this time. Meanwhile, when the audience heard that Tongning was going to appear, they were filled with anticipation. Will Tongning really show up? With so many people here, I don't think she'll show up. I don't think it's necessary, because of a jerk like him. Chapter 1076. According to Tongning's hypocritical personality, there was no way she would show up at the theater. Otherwise, if people said that she forced someone to kneel and violated their human rights, she would end up on the hottest searches again. Plus, there were so many people present. You wanted to know how Tongning would dare to show up. If Tongning doesn't show up, then let's not waste each other's time. If she dares to show up, I'm going to expose all of her scandals to the public. I'm curious, what other scandals do I have that I don't even know about? Why don't you tell me? Tongning's calm voice suddenly sounded from outside the crowd. Everyone turned around and saw Tongning standing behind the crowd with the protection of her bodyguards. The surrounding fans immediately screamed and rushed over to take pictures. Shoo! Tongning shushed everyone, gesturing for them to keep quiet. Although the fans were excited, they quickly quietened down and simply took pictures. As soon as Han Xiuqia saw Tongning, he sneered. You must have set up a trap for me to fall into. Otherwise, why would you show up as soon as I mentioned it? Tongning invited her fans to watch a film and wanted to give them a surprise. Now that I'm here, why don't we discuss the apology you promised and the scandals you promised? Tongning looked into Han Xiuqia's eyes. Previously, during the incident at Superstar Media, you tried to frame me multiple times and cause trouble for my fans. You even made a bet and knelt down to apologize to me. Isn't it time for you to fulfill your promise? Don't forget, you are an artist. What? Shouldn't your persona be to forgive me and show off your kindness? Everyone in the industry knows that I, Tongning, have my revenge. Since you've agreed, then act like a man. Otherwise, even if you look like a man, no one will acknowledge you. I will definitely receive the apology that I deserve, and you were the one who agreed to kneel to me. Tongning said firmly as she looked into Han Xiuqia's eyes. Even if someone says that I offended you, and even if someone calls me evil, I will still receive the apology that I deserve. Are you going to kneel or not? At this moment, everyone looked at Han Xiuqia. They watched as this jerk lost all his dignity in front of Tongning. You still won't kneel. Of course, I won't force you. But everyone in the country knows that you're a person who goes back on his word. It's fine if you don't respect yourself. After speaking, Tongning continued to question Han Xiuqia. Don't you have more scandals to expose? I'm here, and there's so many fans in the cinema. Let's take this opportunity to make things clear. Otherwise, you won't let me go in the future. The surrounding crowd began to point fingers at Han Xiuqia and ridicule him to the extreme. But Han Xiuqia never expected that Tongning would force him in public like this. She was really forcing him. What about me? I've slandered you, suppressed Ma Weiwei, cheated on you with Nzaheo, and used Hollywood's special effects for my film. You've already slandered me for all of this. What else do you want to slander me for? I look forward to it. Originally, the onlookers were just there to watch the show. But after hearing Tongning's words, they were shocked. Everyone already knew about the first two incidents. So, it turned out, Han Xiuqia was still the one who hired the special effects artist? It's fine if you can't answer me. Let me ask you another question. Before this, we didn't even know each other. What have I done to wrong you? Why do you insist on clinging on to me? Is it because I rejected you when you tried to be nice to me in England? That is my right. I have the right to make friends, and I have a family. I need to stick to my bottom line. Why did you investigate someone's family background? Han Xiuqi's background was almost exposed. So, he quickly revealed what Han Jie had told him. Are you trying to get revenge? Or are you trying to threaten me? Tang Ning finally got to the point. With a smile, Tang Ning replied, I'm not interested in your family background. But recently, someone asked me for help investigating an unjust case that happened 20 years ago. I'm sure you're aware that since you're willing to repeatedly hurt an innocent person, abandoning and hurting your own mother shouldn't be a big deal to you, right? There are so many people here today. Although you didn't kneel down and apologize to me and didn't fulfill your promise, I'm sure that in everyone's hearts, you've already become a kneeling man. You're already a man kneeling, and you'll never be able to stand up. After saying this, Tang Ning turned to the onlookers and bowed apologetically. I'm sorry for treating everyone to such an inexplicable show. I'm sure it won't be long before I reveal everything to the public. I hope everyone can be merciful and stop spreading rumors. Don't worry, this jerk didn't fulfill his promise. Anyone with a discerning eye can understand why. That's right. You may be a celebrity, but you have the right to defend your rights. We will definitely support you. The main thing is this Han Xiuqi is too annoying. The onlookers all expressed their support for Tang Ning. Of course, Tang Ning wasn't afraid that the video would be uploaded online. After all, she had already sorted out everything that happened between her and Han Xiuqi and knew that he couldn't stand on his own 2 feet. Tang Ning also believed that the support from the onlookers was real. However, whether or not the news would spread was a completely different matter. So, when she appeared at the theater, the onlookers were indeed shocked. She couldn't even invite them to an event, yet she suddenly appeared in front of everyone just to make Han Xiuqi kneel down and apologize to her. Indeed, this was in line with Tang Ning's personality. She always gave an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. So, the next day, she appeared on the headlines. Tang Ning rips Han Xiuqi apart. In my heart, you're already kneeling. Onlookers support Tang Ning. Men that bully women are all trash. Tang Ning's scandals are all because of him. Of course, Han Xiuqi didn't kneel. This was within Tang Ning's expectations. But, just like she said, from now on, Han Xiuqi was already a kneeling man in everyone's hearts. There was no way he could stand up. But what made the onlookers even more curious was the case that Tang Ning mentioned. Did Han Xiuqi slander and hurt his mother 20 years ago? Where did this come from? Afterwards, someone investigated Han Xiuqi's family background from 20 years ago and was shocked by what they found, of course. Tang Ning's oppression at the theater was a huge humiliation for Han Xiuqi. But what hurt the most was the reopening of a 20-year-old scar. Chapter 1077. How dare that slut say that I slandered and hurt my own mother? Doesn't she know that that woman is more disgusting and despicable than she is? Han Xiuqi threw a tantrum after returning home and smashed a lot of things. Seeing this, Han Jie quickly comforted his brother. It's already in the past. There's no need to get so angry. All women in this world are shameless and despicable. Xiuqi, the most important thing right now is to suppress this matter. After all, even though it wasn't our fault, it won't look good if it's exposed. Oomph, I'll find a way to shut her up. After speaking, Han Xiuqi returned to his room, leaving Han Jie sitting on the sofa with a dark expression. The scene from 20 years ago was still vivid in his mind. At that time, Suyu lay in a pool of blood and asked him to call the police. But because he was afraid of his father's violence, he chose to throw himself into the arms of a mistress. All these years, he had lied to Han Xiuqi because Father Han promised him that as long as he didn't expose the matter, he would hand over the company to him. Therefore, after so many years, he had never thought that the woman would come out and clear her name. It had already been 20 years. Did she still not forget? That made sense. The humiliation and pain was probably something that she would never forget. But to clear her name? How could she clear her name? At that time, there were newspapers everywhere about her playing a game of threesomes. Plus, it had been so long since the incident, and there was no longer any evidence. Wasn't that a fool's dream? But Han Xiuqi's mother was indeed worrisome. Even after 20 years, she still didn't want her son to live a good life. If Han Xiucha was blinded and misunderstood his mother, then Han Jie was simply doing it for his own benefit. After all, he had been taught from a young age to prioritize his own benefits. But during the years that Su Yu was his mother, she always taught him to be kind and humble. So he had long run out of patience. Plus, his father's secretary doted on him a lot. So why would he help Su Yu? Was it because of their ridiculous blood relationship? Isn't that too laughable? Soon, Father Han heard about the incident from overseas and immediately ordered Han Jie. I'm giving you 3 days to suppress the news. Otherwise, we're all finished. Don't worry, Dad. So many years have passed. How could that woman make a comeback? She has been someone else's mistress for so many years. She can't wash herself clean. You don't have to worry. It's better to be careful. Especially don't let Xiucha find out. I know, Han Jie replied solemnly. The reason why Tongning wanted to get involved was because he and Han Xiucha had done a lot of things that angered her. This woman was really a vengeful person. She didn't even give him a chance to vent his anger. So, he wasn't stupid enough to continue going against Tongning. So, he specifically contacted Hai Rui and asked Mo Ting to see Tongning. Even if he had to pay a price, as long as Tongning agreed not to dig any deeper, it would be worth it. But it was obvious that all the sincerity he showed was just like a stone sinking into the ocean. Since Han Xiucha took the initiative, she naturally had to take the initiative. After news of the incident spread, netizens immediately dug up news about the Han family from 20 years ago. Back then, a woman cheated on her second husband. Although the newspaper was old, it was still able to read the full story. At the time, the incident was blown out of proportion, and Su Yu's reputation was completely destroyed. Not only did she lose a leg, she was also betrayed by her husband and son, forced by a mistress, and was scolded by everyone after the incident was revealed. Senior, can you handle it? Seeing the incident grow in popularity in Beijing, Tongning couldn't help but ask Su Yu, if you can't handle it, things have already started. How can I turn back? Su Yu asked calmly. Since I've decided to seek justice, I'm not afraid of being hurt a second time. Besides, I'm sure I didn't do anything wrong. So, why did she only reveal herself after 20 years of silence? According to Tongning's description of the incident, it was obviously different from what was reported in the newspapers. Was it going to be another show to watch? But it didn't take long before the hype died down. Han Jie had already done some par, and Han Xiucha was planning to meet the mother that had humiliated him. So, he decided to meet with Su Yu. Tongning already expected this, so she simply asked Su Yu if she wanted to go. If she didn't want to, she could directly reject him. But Su Yu replied, although I asked you for help, it was simply a way for you to clarify the truth. I still need to face it myself. I can't let you stand in my way. So I want to see her. Okay, if that jerk does anything to hurt you. Don't forget, I have old Long with me. Su Yu laughed. Tongning also smiled. Obviously, she had already forgotten about the incident. She simply instinctively wanted to protect Su Yu. In that case, I'll wait for your good news. After Su Yu hung up the phone, she tidied up a little and headed to Han Xiucha's meeting with Old Long. Of course, even though the hype died down, the media still paid attention to their past, especially when they met. Han Xiucha did not hide his disgust, especially when he saw Su Yu. But Su Yu did not act like a loving mother. She simply sat opposite Han Xiucha and did not show any concern for him. Do you know how disgusting you are? You may not be embarrassed by what happened 20 years ago, but we are. So, tell me, what do you want in exchange for letting go? My current life isn't necessarily worse than yours. So, I don't want anything, I just want justice. Justice? Han Xiucha laughed. Everyone on the streets is talking about you. Do you know how much I've been laughed at? I'm not the one that caused all this. You should be questioning your father and stepmother, Su Yu replied. That's right. You and your brother are probably the same. Back then, you watched as I was framed by a mistress and my right leg was broken by your father. Yet you hugged the mistress's leg and called me mommy. You must be feeling sorry that you didn't see it with your own eyes. What are you talking about? Han Xiucha was obviously confused. What are you pretending for? Haven't the three of you been colluding for a long time? Why are you acting so hypocritical? Don't tell me that you don't know what happened back then and think that it's the truth just because you read the newspapers. Suyu was actually a little shocked. From the looks of it, Han Shoucha really didn't know what happened in that room. Chapter 1078. Don't think that I'll believe you just because you say a few words. After hearing Han Shoucha's words, Suyu shook her head in amusement. So, you've hated me for so many years, yet you don't know what happened back then. But, that's right, if I was that jerk, I wouldn't tell you how I framed and beat up my wife. As for your brother, if you wouldn't have the guts, I don't believe you. It's up to you whether you believe me or not, but it's the truth. You can test your brother, that jerk, or even your stepmother. See if they'll give themselves away, Suyu replied. Otherwise, why would I come here to prove my innocence after 20 years? Do you think I'm short of money? Shoucha, I know you're angry at Tongning because of me. Originally, I planned to let bygones be bygones. But you two brothers still want to hurt an innocent person. I have no choice. Perhaps God wants me to reveal the truth. Han Shoucha never imagined that his father and brother would lie to him. In fact, he refused to believe it even if he died. I won't believe you. You don't need to confuse me anymore. I simply want to warn you not to continue. Otherwise, everyone's outcome will be ugly. Suyu watched as Han Shoucha threatened her, but there was no trace of fear in her eyes. After all, she knew that Han Shoucha was a paranoid person. Otherwise, he wouldn't have persisted until now because Tongning had hurt his pride. Although he claimed that he didn't believe her, he was definitely going to test her. It's been hard on you. The old man stood at the door and listened to the conversation. After hearing how Han Shoucha threatened Suyu, his pity for her deepened. I always thought that he knew, but from the looks of it, that's not the case. Whether he knows or not, it doesn't change the fact that you're enemies. Stop thinking about it and listen, Tongning. Just as Suyu expected, although Han Shoucha pretended that he didn't believe her, deep down, he was suspicious of his father and brother's description. So, as soon as he returned home and faced Han Jie, he deliberately changed the topic to the past. What did that woman say? She even said that you framed her and that she's innocent. There were two men in her bed at that time. Dad and I saw it with our own eyes. Han Jie snorted, and his description was very exaggerated. What about her feet? I fell off the bed and broke it myself. Han Jie answered smoothly. Think about it. She was caught red-handed in bed. She must have begged for Dad's forgiveness, but Dad kicked her away. Didn't you say that Dad didn't care about her at all? What's the difference? Han Shoucha did not say another word. After a moment of silence, he asked, Then what about Dad and the secretary? At that time, Dad was cuckolded and was in a very bad mood. You also know that it was the secretary who kept him company by his side and pulled him together. Okay, I believe you, Han Shoucha said. Of course, this caught Han Jie's attention. What's wrong? Could it be that when you met that woman today, she said something she shouldn't have said to you? She said you were all trying to frame her. Han Shoucha took a sip of water and slowly replied. One is her husband, the other is her son. Why would we want to frame her? She's a woman of loose morals, yet she's blaming others. How shameful. Seeing how agitated Han Jie was, Han Shoucha did not say another word. Although Han Jie's story was flawless, he had a feeling that Han Jie was deliberately hiding something, even though he didn't think he was acting. Once a person had their suspicions, they would crazily try to find the answer. But no matter what the result was, it wasn't something that could be brought to the surface. Yet, Tongning was determined to help Suyu spread the news. If Suyu had chosen to go through legal procedures instead of swallowing her anger, perhaps the truth would have been revealed a long time ago. But sometimes fate was a joke. So, Suyu prepared for a press conference. It was time for her to face the truth. That night, Tongning sat on the sofa with Yen Air in her arms as she thought about Suyu and looked at her daughter's face. Because, in Suyu, she saw a different side of family. When Mo Ting returned home and saw Tongning sitting there in a daze, he immediately took Yen Air from her arms and asked, Why are you in a daze? Annie Su gave birth to two demon-like children. So, I'm afraid our children will definitely not, Ting replied firmly. Our children will definitely be taught well. Okay. I just feel that the responsibility is heavy. Auntie Sue is preparing to hold a press conference and declare war against the Han family. I'm going to help her because I'm also helping myself. I want to ensure that the Ant Queen doesn't have to worry about anything when it's released. Can Hai Rui not get involved in this matter? You protect others, and I'll protect you. As long as no one hurts you, I won't get involved, Ting replied. Do you understand what I mean? Yes. Tongning was relieved as she leaned against Ting's chest. She didn't want Ting to be dragged into this mess. Although the public didn't criticize her for interfering with the Han family's business, it didn't mean that everyone supported her. It was only because she had laid the groundwork in the cinema that people had a certain understanding of her actions. Plus, the netizens wanted to watch a good show, so they didn't criticize her. Su Yu's determination was huge, and her press conference was rushed. Of course, even so, Tongning still told her how to guide the media and what they could do to help her. Plus, they had evidence in their hands. As long as they stood firm, they had a good chance of reclaiming their innocence. No one expected that Su Yu would hold a press conference. Han Jie had spent so much effort on PR and removing the topic from the headlines, but he couldn't stop Su Yu from calling the media. She didn't even go to the hotel. Instead, she used her own home as a venue for the press conference. Of course, this was a declaration of war against the Han family. A scandal from 20 years ago is being brought up again. The person involved, Su Yu, will immediately show you what happened on that night 20 years ago. Let's see what happened that turned her from a victim into a slut. Today's reporters will be reporting live for you. Thank you for your attention. Inside the garden of Su Yu's home, she sat in front of a chair that had been prepared neatly for the media. She then faced the cameras and began to tell a heavy story. Before we begin, I would like to say a few words. Chapter 1079. I'm sure you're all curious as to why I've only returned after 20 years. At this moment, I would like to give an explanation. Originally, I had completely cut off all contact with that family. However, because of the actions of the Han brothers, an innocent person was implicated and my conscience felt uneasy. Thus, I decided to step forward and explain to everyone what had happened 20 years ago, for the sake of the innocent and for my own sake. The innocent person that Su Yu was referring to, without a doubt, was Tongning. The grudge between Han Xiucha and Tongning had just been revealed at the cinema. Firstly, I would like to refute the newspaper from 20 years ago. Everything that was published in the newspaper was not the truth. On that night, 20 years ago, my ex-husband's secretary gave me a phone call and told me that she needed to go home to retrieve some documents for my husband. She asked me to open the door for her, and I agreed. But who would have thought that I was inviting a wolf into the house? She directly brought two men home. As soon as she entered the house, she pressed me to the ground and threatened and beat me. Afterwards, the two men stripped naked and began to humiliate me. Meanwhile, my ex-husband's secretary stood to the side and took photos. As a woman, I couldn't fight back against the two men. But at this time, my husband returned. After he discovered my disgraceful behavior, he felt betrayed. But after I tried my best to explain myself, my ex-husband found out that it was all his secretary's plan. After all, the two of them had a secret relationship for many years. The secretary wasn't satisfied with being a mistress, so she came to humiliate me and threatened me to divorce her husband. When my ex-husband saw this, he had no choice but to cooperate with his mistress and accuse me of cheating. He even broke my right leg. At that time, my eldest son, Han Jie, was hiding in the doorway and witnessed everything. I told him to call the police, but he simply hugged his secretary's leg and hid in her arms, claiming that he was scared. After that, they teamed up with the media to smear my name and expose the photos. That's the whole story. Since then, I've been called a slut, and I've been carrying it for 20 years. Miss Su, since this happened 20 years ago, will no one believe you if you come to clarify it today? Can you produce the relevant evidence to prove that you were innocent at that time? After hearing the entire story, The reporters suddenly felt that Su Yu was quite pitiful. If everything she said today was true, then the Han family were the scum of the scum. I simply want to clarify everything that happened 20 years ago. I won't be providing any evidence today. I want to see how the Han family respond, Su Yu replied. I want to know if the Han family dare to face these few questions of mine. First, about the matter between my ex-husband and his secretary. Many people in the company knew about it. Does my ex-husband dare to deny it? Second, the men who humiliated me at that time. One is Little Sand's classmate, the other is her cousin. Do these two people dare to come out for investigation? Third, back then, my eldest son witnessed the entire process with his own eyes. Do you dare to come out and tell the truth? Su Yu's three questions were sharp and pointed to the crux of the matter. The reason why she didn't reveal any evidence at this time was because Tongning had told her not to reveal her trump card. That way, the Han family wouldn't dare to act recklessly. But at the same time, she had to give the Han family a time limit to prevent them from running away. If the Han family don't come out and answer my questions, I will reveal the evidence in 3 days. After hearing Su Yu's words, the media could sense the confidence that emanated from her heart. It seemed she was ready to tear the Han family apart. Meanwhile, after seeing Su Yu's interview, Han Jie smashed his laptop on the floor. If he had known this would happen, he wouldn't have provoked Tongning. That way, he wouldn't have ended up smelling like a prostitute. But, faced with Su Yu's three questions, Han Jie already had a plan. After all, the company was now in his hands. If the public opinion was indeed on Su Yu's side, then he had to consider leaving himself with a backup plan. For example, he could say that he was forced by his father. For example, he could say that he was so frightened by his father's violence that he could clear his name at any time. But how was he going to explain himself to Han Xiuqia? Especially after Su Yu held a press conference, it didn't take long before Han Xiuqia found his way to Han Jie's office. As soon as he entered, he looked at Han Jie and asked, "Things have already gotten out of hand. What should we do now? That woman is a real bitch." "I'm glad you know that." Han Jie nodded. "That woman's actions have placed us all on the grill. We have no right to speak now. You must know, whether we respond to her or not, we will still be scolded to death by the media. We have to think of a solution. Are we going to sit back and let her slander us? Actually, I don't believe that she has any evidence. Let's just brush her off for now," Han Jie suggested. "If you hadn't clung on to Tongning and refused to let her go, things wouldn't have gotten to this point. Weren't you the one that hired the special effects artist to slander her?" Han Xiuqia sneered. Han Jie was speechless. After quite some time, he finally replied, "I did it because I wanted to stand up for you." "I'm sure you know whether you did it because you wanted to stand up for me or yourself," Han Xiuqia replied with a hidden meaning. "Brother, don't tell me you actually believe that woman's words. Don't forget, she's being manipulated by Tongning." "I'm sure you're well aware of Tongning's methods." "Of course I don't believe her words," Han Xiuqia replied. "But he no longer only believed you." Han Xiuqia did not say the second half of a sentence. Instead, he left Han Jie's office and decided to look for evidence on his own. At least, Su Yu had given him a direction. For example, the matter with the secretary and the classmate and cousin. If he found out that someone had lied to him like a fool, he would definitely not let the matter rest. Even if it was his father and brother, he would not go easy on them. Even if it was his own father and brother, he would not go easy on them. The incident attracted a lot of attention because of the large amount of publicity. Plus, Su Yu threw out an important question and waited for the Han family to respond. Following on, it was up to the Han family to decide what to do. Of course, Tongning remained by Su Yu's side the entire time. She felt that she had to take responsibility for Su Yu's actions today. She also wanted Su Yu to prove her innocence. "I hope Uncle Long can keep you safe. Otherwise, I'll feel guilty for the rest of my life. Don't worry, I can't guarantee anything else, but I definitely need to be safe," Su Yu comforted. "Besides, your method is very effective. I'm sure it won't be long before this matter comes to an end." "Really? Let's put a question mark on it first." Chapter 1080. According to how shameless the Han family was, How could they admit defeat so easily? Because of this incident, the media surrounded the Han family like a waterfall. Whether it was the Han family's office or Han Jie's and Han Xiuqi's residences, there were reporters everywhere. On the surface, Han Jie appeared to be patient and friendly towards the reporters. But behind their backs, he was actually cursing them all out. Plus, no matter how the reporters questioned him, he simply smiled and remained silent. Wasn't he afraid that Su Yu would present him with evidence 3 days later? During this time, Father Han made a few phone calls to check on the progress of the investigation. He also told everyone involved to keep their mouths shut, especially those that knew about his relationship with his secretary. He told them to keep their mouths shut so Su Yu wouldn't be able to find any evidence. Don't worry, Dad. I've already thought of a plan. I'm going to minimize the negative impact this incident will have on us. So, he wasn't afraid that Su Yu would reveal any evidence. Even if she did, he could immediately retaliate. After all, he had given his stepmother and cousin a sum of money to arrange for his cousin's wife to fake a suicide. Afterwards, he was going to play the pity card and cry until everyone believed that her husband was innocent. If Su Yu dared to act recklessly, even if she was his biological mother, he would have no choice but to put justice before family. By this time, 2 days had already passed since Su Yu's press conference. But Han Jie obviously had no intention of responding. No matter how people asked, tried to find out, or pressured him, he simply shrugged and refused to respond. Or he pretended to be wronged and created the impression that she was his biological mother, so he couldn't hurt her. Even if she was slandering him, he would still respect her. Han Jie was obviously smart. He wasn't as impulsive as Han Xiuqi, especially when it came to this matter. If he made a single mistake, he could end up in a bottomless abyss. If he responded, Su Yu could retaliate. Su Yu was helpless as she called Tongning. What should we do now? The Han family won't admit to anything and won't respond. Are we supposed to release the evidence tomorrow? Auntie Su, Han Jie is smart and cunning. He knows that if he responds, he'll be slapped in the face. That's why he chose to avoid it. What should we do now? Release the evidence. But if I show the evidence, what if he comes out to refute it? After hearing this, Tongning laughed. That's exactly what we want them to refute. The first piece of evidence we've prepared is related to Car's sex. When the time comes, Han Jie will definitely step out to deny it or fake evidence that Father Han went somewhere else that day. But don't forget, we've already investigated Father Han's itinerary that day. As long as Han Jie steps out to refute, we will be able to prove that he's lying. So, Tongning's intention was to release the evidence, not to prove that Father Han had an affair with his secretary. After all, the evidence wasn't direct enough. Instead, it was to lure Han Jie out and prove that he was lying. Tongning wanted Han Jie to lose trust in front of the public in the first match. The former was a test, while the latter was the real goal. I understand what you mean. They had to be in the leading position and not let the Han family take the initiative. But the Han family were shameless, so Tongning had to be prepared for their counterattack. Even the most despicable methods, she had to be prepared. Apart from what she taught Su Yu, Tongning also knew how to analyze the situation. Of course, sometimes her brain wasn't as agile as it used to be. So, Mo Ting was her best teacher. During Su Yu's press conference, she revealed a lot of information. But, apart from the 3 main witnesses, the first is Han Jie, the second is the secretary's cousin, and the third is her classmate. There's no way that Han Jie will step out to testify. That leaves the cousin and the friend that we have our eyes on. If it was you, how would you deal with them? Mo Ting asked Tongning. As long as the two of them are stable, it will be hard for Su Yu to get out of this. If you were Han Jie, what would you do? After hearing Mo Ting's words, Tongning fell into deep thought. Imagine yourself as one of them and pretend that you're innocent. But when you're suddenly accused of committing a heinous crime, what would you do? Of course, you'd claim that you're innocent and drag your friends and family along to prove that you're not in the wrong. Apart from hurting yourself to gain the public's attention, they don't seem to have any other ideas, Mo Ting said calmly. Mo Ting said calmly. If they all speak up and do something to hurt themselves, then Suyu will be accused of framing an innocent person and destroying two families. Indeed, this was also the most commonly used method of denial by those who had done evil. So, it's reasonable for Han Jie to be confident that he won't respond. After all, it seemed like there was a lot of evidence left behind, but it was all fragmented and old. That's why I'm placing all my hopes on Han Xiucha. I heard from Annie Su that Han Xiucha has no idea that he's been kept in the dark by his brother and father all these years. The reason why he hates women so much is because of the humiliation that Annie Su brought him in the past. But if this entire incident was set up by his brother and father, and they've been lying to him for so many years, according to his personality, he will definitely fly into a rage. He's indeed a jerk, but when it comes to his prey, he's determined to punish them no matter what. So, he may be one of our hopes of making a comeback. Either way, let's wait and see, Tongning said as she looked into his eyes. She then looked into his eyes for a while before asking, "Am I very annoying?" "Yes, I'm very annoying," Tongning said as she looked into his eyes for a long time. "Huh, you're always a busybody. It's not that you like to be a busybody, it's just that, no matter how you look at it, you have no choice but to get involved. Otherwise, the Han brothers would always be trouble. So, I'm afraid I won't be able to attend to the next promotional event. Since she was already involved, she was going to do it beautifully. Everything you're doing right now is equivalent to promoting your film. My wife, you're always on the hottest list. I've gotten used to it over the years," Mo Ting laughed. "But if you really want to apologize, I don't mind if you work a little harder at night." "What are you talking about?" Tongning glared at him. This man always had the ability to change the topic back to that. "Fine, I was wrong. I should have worked a little harder." Chapter 1081. Soon, the 3 days were up. The media stretched their necks in anticipation. They wanted to know what evidence Suyu was going to reveal and how explosive it would be. Han Jie also wanted to know what other tricks Suyu had up her sleeves. After all, he had already placed everyone involved in the incident under control. He didn't believe that Suyu would be able to take advantage of this opportunity. However, after 3 days, Suyu gained a lot of information. It was the result of Long Jie's investigation. So, she and Tongning immediately made some adjustments to the evidence. Suyu did not miss her appointment. She indeed appeared in front of the media and, according to Tongning's plan, exposed the first piece of evidence. The news that Father Han and his secretary cheated on each other and that the car vibrated in the secretary's apartment. Of course, the incident had already happened 20 years ago and there were no surveillance cameras. But in the video that was released, the secretary's neighbor personally described the incident and recalled seeing the car vibrate. In reality, Suyu also had a key piece of evidence in her hands. It was the result of Long Jie's investigation. At the time, the neighbor had the habit of recording her son's growth, so she accidentally captured an intimate photo of Father Han and his secretary. Although the photo was old and black and white, it was enough to see the couple clearly. But Suyu simply released the video of the interview and did not reveal the photos. So, when the media and Han Jie saw the video, they burst out laughing. It's already been 20 years. How can the neighbors remember it so clearly? Could they have been bribed? Exactly. We've waited so long for 3 days. Why is this a video? It's meaningless. This can't even be considered evidence. Don't tell me Suyu has nothing to show? After seeing the evidence that Suyu exposed, Han Jie sat in his office and laughed for quite some time. If this was the evidence that Suyu and Tongning were talking about, then she would never be able to clear her name. So after letting his guard down, Han Jie finally accepted an interview. "I'm sure the media have already seen the evidence that my mother is talking about. I think she's sick. Back then, my father loved her so much, yet she betrayed our family. Now, they're trying to reopen each other's scars, and they're using such a ridiculous video. It's already been 20 years. How can the neighbors still remember it so clearly? This can't even be considered evidence. So we are innocent. Right now, I just hope that this matter can pass as soon as possible. There is absolutely nothing between father and the secretary. I can guarantee it on my honor. Thank you, everyone, for your attention. Sorry for making you laugh. It seemed everyone treated Su Yu's evidence as a joke. If Tongning was the mastermind behind the scenes, then it would be a serious dereliction of PR. This wasn't Tangning's style. Plus, Han Xiuqia had already used his reputation as a guarantor. In other words, it was time to put an end to this matter. However, just as everyone was laughing at Su Yu for creating hype, she continued to release something else. If the video from before was just an appetizer, then this was the real deal, the main course. Although the photo she released was old, the couple hugging intimately in the background was definitely Father Han and his secretary. And there was more than one. Hugs, even kisses. Everyone was stunned when they saw the photo. This is a marital affair. There's no doubt about it, right? And there are photos as proof. Han Jie has just used his reputation as a guarantor, yet he's already revealed evidence. Isn't this a little too much of a face slap? I have to hand it to her. She's obviously digging a hole for Han Jie to jump into. Ha ha. I love face slaps like this. It's very Tongning style. It's so satisfying. So, let's get back to the main point. Han Jie has used his reputation as a guarantor to prove that his father and secretary are innocent. But Su Yu has now presented evidence to prove that their relationship is indeed improper. Plus, there's even a time frame on the back of the photo. Father Han and Su Yu are not divorced at this time. In other words, it's proven that they've had an affair. So, Su Yu won the first battle, and her evidence made her words a lot more believable. On the other hand, Han Jie lost his credibility in the first battle. So, it would be a lot more difficult for him to compete with him again. So, can the Han family face up to my 3 questions now? If you still don't answer, I'm going to release the second piece of evidence. Seeing this provocation, Han Jie almost went crazy. That bitch, Tongning, is too calculative. Han Xiuqia looked at Han Jie's angry expression and scoffed. Who told you to look down on her? Stop making sarcastic remarks. You have a responsibility to protect the Han family's reputation. Han Xiuqia did not say a word. After quite some time, he finally replied, Of course, I have to protect it, but I will do it in my own way. I've doted on you for so many years for nothing. Han Xiuqia understood that Han Jie was in a fit of anger and was venting his anger on him. So, he packed his things and returned home. Of course, his so-called way was to find out the truth. At least, from the evidence that Su Yu had exposed, it was clear that his father was indeed having an affair with his secretary. This made Han Xiuqia feel disgusted by the look on his secretary's face that said, I saved your father. Thinking about it, it seemed the fastest way to find out the truth was to get close to Han Jie. So, he packed his things and moved into Han Jie's home. You have your own home. Why are you staying here? It's a sensitive time. Don't worry about me wandering around outside. Han Xiuqia asked. Han Jie rubbed his neck and did not say a word. Han Xiuqia was right. Although this bomb was dangerous, it was best to keep it by his side for him to feel safe. That woman is asking for a response again. If you don't do something this time, she's going to reveal something even more explosive. When that happens, don't blame me for not reminding you. Stop talking, I'm feeling annoyed. Han Xiuqia didn't know if Su Yu had any more evidence, but he wanted to force Han Jie to react. The faster he acted, the sooner he would expose himself. Meanwhile, Su Yu had won her first battle and was giving Tongning a phone call to thank her. Although the evidence was coincidental and a form of luck, if Long Jie hadn't visited the house, it probably wouldn't have attracted the attention of the surrounding neighbors. So, Tongning was still the one to thank for everything. What should we do next? Han Jie will definitely come out and respond. We'll attack wherever we point and make sure he completely loses trust in the public. When that time comes, even if you don't have any evidence, you'll still win. After all, no one will believe a liar. Chapter 1082. So, even Han Jie himself wasn't sure how much trust the public still had in his words. Regardless of the truth, the first round of the argument was satisfying for the audience and kept them in high spirits. Meanwhile, Han Jie's situation was even more difficult. If he didn't respond the first time because he underestimated Tong Ning and Su Yu, then he had to show his attitude the second time around. Su Yu had already reiterated her stance. If the Han family still didn't step out and respond to her initial questions, she would release more evidence. When that happened, the Han family would be in an even worse position. This incident put Han Jie in a difficult position, especially since his face was still hurting. He knew how difficult it was to deal with Su Yu with Tong Ning's help. After thinking for a bit, he decided that before he confirmed what evidence Su Yu had, he couldn't give up on the main show. So, he had no choice but to temporarily shift the blame onto Tong Ning. So, during his next PR meeting, Han Jie switched the target of his criticism to Tong Ning. This is only our family's matter. I hope that outsiders will not interfere. With your methods, you might cause the destruction of my family. Plus, I must admit that I may have been partially deceived. But my father's incident and my mother's cheating on two men have nothing to do with each other. Just because my father cheated doesn't mean my mother is innocent. On the contrary, what if we are innocent? Who is this outsider? There was no need to explain. Everyone already knew. Not only did Han Jie shift the blame onto someone else, he even pretended that he had been deceived and insisted that even if his father was in the wrong and his mother cheated, she wasn't innocent. Of course, Han Jie's main motive was to divert the attention of the onlookers and turn their attention to Tong Ning. According to him, he was saying, "You're an outsider. What right do you have to interfere in someone else's family matters? Su Yu isn't your artist, nor is she your relative. What right do you have to stir up trouble?" On the surface, Han Jie's words weren't unreasonable. After all, this matter had nothing to do with Tong Ning from the beginning. What right did she have to use justice to interfere in someone else's family matters? For normal people, this was a taboo. Not to mention, Tong Ning had tens of millions of fans. So, Han Jie's question was reasonable. All that could be said was his actions were stupid. Tong Ning was well aware that there was no way she could get herself out of this mess. After all, she was the one who started it all. So, it was up to her manager, Mo Ting, to respond. However, CEO Mo did not say anything. He only sorted out the 3 pieces of evidence. The first was the short video that Han Xiucha had released before the trailer for The Ant Queen. During the editing process, he accidentally left his own logo on the video, leading netizens to ridicule the film. Secondly, at the film festival, Han Xiucha slandered Tong Ning and Zhehao for having an illicit relationship. The third was that Han Jie bribed a special effects artist to slander the Ant Queen for using Hollywood's methods. Then, it was the Mo-style summary. Firstly, my wife has never wronged the two of you. But from Superstar Media to the screening of the Ant Queen, how many times have the Korean brothers attacked you? I believe that the evidence mentioned above is very clear. Secondly, you've done so many things and attacked me first. Am I supposed to allow you to bully my wife? Don't you have any idea why things have developed to this state today? Thirdly, don't try to divert the public's attention. My wife wasn't the cause of the Han family's incident. It's just a cycle of karma. Right and wrong will eventually be revealed. That's why I hope President Han can face Su Yu's problem. Don't bring trouble onto yourself and reap what you sow. Lastly, my wife simply helped and didn't twist the truth. She can take responsibility for everything she says. In other words, Han Jie's attempt to divert the public's attention was simply to increase the public's hatred towards them. As expected, as soon as Mo Ting's evidence was revealed, the Han brothers' last shred of shame was revealed. The Han brothers are freaks. They don't want to admit what they've done, yet they're asking others why they're meddling in other people's business. My Ning has provoked the most disgusting brothers. There's no one else. I really can't understand how these two brothers have the cheek to call Tong Ning an outsider. They were obviously the ones that tried to frame her first. My Ning doesn't have time to spare. If it weren't for the fact that these two brothers are disgusting, who would want to provoke them? Even if I hid, I wouldn't win. All in all, Han Jie wanted to use Tong Ning to divert the public's attention. But He never expected that President Mo would kick the ball back into his court. Was it so easy to throw the blame away? After being slapped left and right, Han Jie was flung back and forth. He had no strength to retaliate at all. The spectators cheered in satisfaction. If Tongning had interfered with the Han family's matters without any reason, perhaps Han Jie could have made a counterattack. But he had done so many hurtful things. Shouldn't he be treated with respect? Han Jie was driven to the brink of insanity. At this time, Father Han called to pressure and rush him. Han Jie immediately lost his temper. Because of your stupid matter, I have to pay such a huge price. You can hide overseas, but what about me? Isn't one troublemaker enough? Don't talk about me. Aren't you selfish yourself? Father Han asked. I've already given you the company. What else do you want? This mess is too messed up. If I can't clean it up, Dad, you'll have to shoulder the responsibility yourself. I was young back then and didn't know any better. Han Jie, you are such an ungrateful person. Han Jie couldn't be bothered to listen to him as he hung up the phone. Out of the few people in the family, not a single one made him feel at ease. He either caused trouble or threw the blame away. It sure wasn't easy for him. Han Jie threw his phone aside and noticed Han Xiuqia leaning against the doorway with his arms crossed. Han Jie's heart skipped a beat as he asked, Why didn't you knock before coming in? I did. You didn't hear me. Han Xiuqia crossed his arms innocently. What did you hear? Is there something you're afraid of me hearing? Han Xiuqia asked. Nothing. If there's nothing else, then go out. Han Jie was not in the mood to argue. There was a pile of mess waiting for him to clean up. He was currently being suppressed by Tongning and Suyu to the point where he couldn't even breathe. If he couldn't hold on, he would have no choice but to betray everyone in the family. Of course, if he couldn't do anything about it, then everyone in the family could only pray for their own good. Go out and respond to Suyu? What was going on? No matter what he did, Tongning would send him straight to hell. This was what happened to him and Han Xiuqia when they first offended Tongning and the Mo couple. He had no choice but to use his trump card. Chapter 1083. Because of this, Han Jie went to look for the cousin of one of the parties involved. But, as the situation had been quite tense lately, the cousin took some time off from work and couldn't even go to work. As soon as he saw Han Jie, he anxiously grabbed onto him and asked, What should I do? Will I end up in jail? After hearing this, Han Jie laughed in anger. If you didn't know if you'd end up in jail, why did you still do it? I was blinded by greed at the time. Even though it's a criminal case, it's already past the legal deadline. Plus, it's just a scandal, Han Jie explained calmly. Han Jie explained calmly. It's just that your reputation is going to be really bad. That's why I came looking for you today to solve this problem. As long as you can save me, that's all that matters. For a small family like ours to be hit with a scandal like this will definitely be judged by our neighbors. I'm fine with it, but what about my son? The man had an oily look on his face because he didn't go to work properly all year round. In reality, he relied on his parents to run a business to make a living. Han Jie sat down and taught the man how to handle the situation. I'll have to trouble Annie to put on this show. After all, women are a vulnerable group of people. It's best to arouse the sympathy of others. I understand. I know how to cry out for my innocence. In that case, I'll wait for your good news. Han Jie stayed at the man's house for about 3 hours before he left. However, not long after, someone knocked on the man's door. The man thought it was Han Jie returning, but in the end, he was dragged out the door by a large hand. Han Xiuqia dragged the man to a quiet alleyway, pressed him against the wall, and punched him a few times before he asked, What did Han Jie want you to do? Han Xiuqia. After seeing the man's face, the man's expression changed in fear. What was the truth behind that incident? Han Xiuqia asked, What happened that year? That year, your mother. You should know, right? I'm more ruthless than Han Jie. You can choose not to tell me, but I won't let you walk out of here alive, Han Xiuqia said as he pressed the man against the wall and grabbed him by the neck. Think about it carefully. Ever since he was young, Han Xiuqia had always been different from the average person and had a strange personality. So, if he had to choose between the two brothers, he would definitely be more afraid of Han Xiuqia. Then if I tell the truth, you can't do anything to me. I'll only dare to say it if you guarantee it. I promise you. Han Shocha let go of the man, but he placed his foot on the wall to prevent the man from escaping. My cousin was the one that started all this. She first told me that she was pregnant, but Mr. Han refused to divorce Suyu. So, she asked me to help her scare Suyu. I had no idea what would happen next. At that time, I was simply blinded by lust. I really didn't insult your mother. She was my cousin's classmate. Tell me everything you know. The color of Han Shocha's eyes began to change. At that time, the man was humiliating Suyu. So, I pretended to be calm while my cousin took photos. But, unexpectedly, Hanyu returned. So, my cousin had no choice but to explain everything to the public. Hanyu knew that we were deliberately causing trouble for Suyu, but because my cousin was young and beautiful, he became her accomplice. What about her leg? Hanyu was the one that broke it. Was Hanjie there? Of course he was there. He hid at the door and witnessed everything. At that time, when Suyu asked him to make a phone call, Hanjie ran up to my cousin and hugged her leg, calling her mommy. I can still remember the look of despair on Suyu's face to this day. After hearing the jerk's story, Han Shocha's eyes turned red. This was because his body was filled with anger. Can you swear that everything you've said today is the truth? No. I want you to repeat what you said to the video. After speaking, Han Shocha pulled out his phone and pointed it at the jerk's face. If you don't repeat what you said, I will kill you right here and now. The man was scared silly, but under Han Shocha's pressure, he had no choice but to do as he was told. You can't let Han Jie know that I came looking for you. Just do as he says. Although I promised that I wouldn't hit you, I still couldn't control myself. After speaking, Han Shocha punched the jerk again. This will make your acting even more realistic. After venting his anger, Han Shocha finally left the alleyway. Meanwhile, the man lay on the ground, unable to get up. It turned out this was the truth. It turned out this was the person that he had hated for so many years. He never expected that Han Jie had lied to him for so many years. With this thought, Han Shocha grabbed the evidence and disappeared into the night. But the secretary's cousin probably thought that since they were both from the Han family, even if he told Han Shocha the truth, it wouldn't be a problem. But he underestimated Han Shocha's temper. Han Shocha was indeed a jerk, a natural jerk. Perhaps this was because of his father's genes. But the cause of everything was Suyu. Even though he had to deal with Tongning, he still had to admit that it was because of the humiliation that Suyu brought him. That's why, after falling for Tongning, his pride was hurt and he decided to seek revenge. After all, women were cheap and fake. But the person that he trusted the most, the person that he hated the most, had to endure the greatest humiliation in the world. His worldview collapsed because he felt that he couldn't accept such an outcome. Of course, he wasn't going to let Han Jie know that he already knew the entire truth. He was going to see how spectacular Han Jie's act was going to be. As for Suyu, Han Shocha took a deep breath as a complex feeling filled his heart. Previously, the entire world didn't believe Suyu. Tongning was the only one that exposed the truth, reported it, and rediscovered it. She even came up with a PR plan for Suyu without any hesitation. As a result, Han Shocha's son couldn't even be compared to an outsider like Tongning. After learning the truth, the people that he originally hated were no longer hated. The people that he originally trusted had now become his enemies. This was perhaps the biggest punishment in the world. Tongning and Suyu guessed that Han Shocha would react violently after finding out the truth. But after waiting for so long, he did not do anything. Could it be that he still planned to stand by his brother's side after finding out the truth? Indeed, Han Jie had taken care of him all these years, so he couldn't possibly betray his family. A jerk would always be a jerk. Don't expect him to turn over a new leaf. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.